The Force screamed. Every Jedi from the core worlds to the outer rim felt it, a wrongness that transcended words, a violation of the natural order so profound that even those with minimal sensitivity to the Force clutched their chests in sudden, inexplicable dread. On Coruscant, Jedi Masters stumbled in the temple corridors. On distant outposts, Padawans woke from meditation gasping. And on Korriban, ancient burial world of the Sith, the very stones trembled with something that was neither light nor dark but utterly, impossibly other. The tear manifested first as silence. The perpetual howl of dark side energy that shrouded Korriban's atmosphere simply stopped. Then reality itself seemed to peel back like flesh from bone, revealing a wound in space that pulsed with colors no human eye was meant to perceive. Lightning that wasn't lightning crackled at the edges, purple and black and something beyond the visible spectrum that made observers' eyes water and their minds recoil. From this impossible wound, something fell. It descended like a meteor but moved with purpose, a massive vessel of alien design that bore no resemblance to Republic frigates or Sith dreadnoughts. Its hull was dark, almost organic in appearance, covered in angular protrusions that suggested both advanced technology and deliberate menace. The ship didn't so much land as impose itself upon Korriban's surface, crushing ancient monuments beneath its bulk with the casual indifference of a boot stepping on insects. The dimensional rift sealed behind it with a sound like reality itself sighing in relief. In the Valley of the Dark Lords, where the tombs of Tulak Horde, Mark Aragnos, and Naga Sadow had stood undisturbed for millennia, Sith acolytes scattered in panic. They had trained to embrace fear, to transform terror into power through the dark side. But this was different. This was primal. Whatever had arrived carried with it an aura of inevitability that even the most battle-hardened Sith Lord could feel pressing against their consciousness like a vice. The ship's boarding ramp descended with mechanical precision. Mist rolled out, not the natural fog of Korriban's perpetual gloom, but something that seemed to absorb light rather than diffuse it. And within that darkness, footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Patient. He emerged into the red-tinged light of Korriban's dying sun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Thanos of Titan stood 3 meters tall, his purple skin marked with ceremonial scars that spoke of countless battles. His armor was gold and blue, practical yet regal, designed by a civilization that had mastered both war and philosophy. But it was his eyes that truly unsettled those who witnessed his arrival, eyes that held neither malice nor mercy, only absolute conviction. He surveyed the Valley of the Dark Lords with the gaze of someone accustomed to evaluating worlds not for their beauty or strategic value, but for how many souls they contained. Behind him, shapes moved in the mist. Soldiers, if such a word could apply to the creatures that followed. Some were humanoid, clad in biomechanical armor that seemed grown rather than forged. Others were more alien still, quadrupedal beasts with too many teeth and an eagerness for violence that made even Korriban's native Tucata seem tame by comparison. "Scan complete, my lord," a voice called from within the ship, feminine, cold, precise. Local designation, Korriban. Inhabited. Population concentrated in Academy structure 12 kilometers northeast. Technological level, primitive by our standards. Energy readings, anomalous. Recommend caution. Thanos said nothing for a long moment. He knelt, placing one massive hand against Korriban's red sand, and his expression shifted from neutrality to something approaching curiosity. When he stood, dust fell from his fingers like dried blood. "The soil remembers death," he said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate in the chest rather than the ears. "Billions have died on this world. Their essence lingers." He looked toward the distant Sith Academy, where lights flickered in windows like watching eyes. "Fitting. We will begin here." High above, in the cold void of space, more ships were emerging. Not from hyperspace, the Sith patrol vessels orbiting Korriban had been watching for Republic incursions, not impossible arrivals from nowhere. These ships simply appeared, tearing through the fabric of reality with the same violent intrusion as their flagship. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. An armada from beyond the stars. On the bridge of the Sith dreadnought Harbinger, Captain Uriv stared at his sensor display with mounting horror. "Get me the Dark Council," he whispered. "Get me anyone. Tell them," he swallowed hard. "Tell them something has arrived. Something wrong." Thanos turned his gaze skyward, watching his fleet assemble with the satisfaction of a craftsman viewing completed work. He had crossed the void between universes, pursuing a vision that consumed him utterly, a vision of balance, of sustainability, of a galaxy saved from itself through the only means he had ever found effective. Mercy through culling. Salvation through sacrifice. Balance through perfectly executed, impartial, dispassionate genocide. "Ready the armies," he commanded. "Map the populated systems. Calculate the numbers." He paused, breathing in air that tasted of ash and ancient rage. "This galaxy will learn what it means to be saved." In the Sith Academy, alarms began to wail. Across Korriban, dark side adepts reached out with the Force, trying to understand what they were sensing. They found only a void where a mind should be, not empty like a droid, but dense, like trying to peer through a black hole's event horizon. Whatever had arrived, the Force itself seemed uncertain how to categorize it. And in that uncertainty, a new chapter of galactic history began to write itself in blood and ash and the mathematics of inevitable extinction. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The message reached Darth Malgus 3 hours after Thanos' arrival, delivered by a trembling acolyte who had crossed half the Sith Empire to deliver it in person rather than risk communications interception by Republic intelligence. The Sith Lord stood in the war room of his fortress on Dromund Kaas, studying holographic projections of Republic fleet movements, when the young human stumbled through the door and dropped to one knee. "Lord Malgus," the acolyte gasped, "Korriban, something has." Malgus raised one hand, and the acolyte's words died in his throat, not through force choking, but through the sheer presence of a man who had conquered star systems through will alone. "Compose yourself," Malgus said, his voice distorted by the respirator mask that covered his ravaged face. "The dark side respects strength, not panic." The acolyte straightened, forcing his fear into something resembling discipline. "My lord, a vessel of unknown origin has breached Korriban's orbit. No hyperspace signature. No warning. Captain Uriv reports the ship emerged from nothing. From a wound in space itself." He produced a data chip with shaking fingers. "The sensor recordings, my lord. The Dark Council requests your immediate assessment." Malgus took the chip, his cybernetic eyes narrowing behind his mask. Korriban was sacred to the Sith, a world of tombs and terrible power where apprentices went to prove themselves or die trying. An attack that was either supreme confidence or supreme ignorance. He inserted the chip into the holographic projector and watched the recording unfold. The dimensional rift appeared first, a tear in reality that made even hardened Sith technology malfunction from the sheer impossibility of it. Then the ship, massive and alien, descended with the weight of absolute authority. And finally, him. The purple-skinned giant who stood among the tombs of Sith lords as though he belonged there, radiating not dark side corruption but something else entirely. Something that made Malgus's instincts, honed through decades of warfare, scream warnings his conscious mind was only beginning to process. "Enhance Sector 7, Malgus commanded. The hologram zoomed to focus on Thanos' face. Those eyes. Malgus had seen many expressions in his time: rage, fear, ambition, desperation. This was none of those. This was certainty. The certainty of someone who had calculated an equation and found the answer acceptable, no matter how much blood the solution required. He surveyed the valley like a farmer assessing livestock, Malgus murmured. Not with hunger. Not with contempt. With evaluation. Behind him, his apprentice Elena Daru approached cautiously. The Twi'lek woman had learned to read her master's moods through subtle shifts in stance and breathing. Right now, Malgus stood utterly still, which meant he was considering violence. Master, the Dark Council debates sending you to Korriban. Some believe this intruder should be destroyed immediately. Others, she hesitated. Others wonder if he could be useful. Malgus turned from the hologram, his cape swirling with the motion. Useful. They see a new weapon to aim at the Republic. He walked to the viewport, gazing out at Draman Kasa's eternal storms. They are fools. This is no Sith Lord seeking alliance. Look at his ships. He gestured to the hologram still rotating behind him. That armada didn't come seeking our power. It came because it already possesses power. Then what do? We go to Korriban, Malgus said. But not as the Dark Council's errand boy. We go because I would meet this Titan, and learn whether he is a threat to be eliminated or a force that will reshape this war into something new. He turned back to his apprentice, and even through the mask, she could feel his smile. The Republic and the Jedi believe themselves righteous. We Sith embrace our darkness. But what do you call someone who falls between? Someone who brings destruction not from passion but from cold calculation. An abomination? Or a prophet? Malgus moved toward the door with sudden purpose. Prepare my ship. And summon the vindictive guard. If this stranger proves hostile, he will learn that the Sith do not yield easily, even to the impossible. The journey to Korriban took 18 hours through hyperspace. Malgus spent the time reviewing every scrap of intelligence his agents had gathered. The intruder had not attacked the Sith Academy, not yet. Instead, his forces had established a perimeter around their landing site, constructing fortifications with disturbing efficiency. Automated construction drones worked alongside alien soldiers, erecting structures that seemed to blur the line between technology and something almost organic. More troubling were the reports from acolytes who had attempted to approach. Those who came in aggression were cut down without hesitation by soldiers whose weapons fired energy unlike anything in the Imperial arsenal. Those who came peacefully were scanned, recorded, catalogued, then released with a single message: return to your masters. Tell them the Titan will speak when preparations are complete. Arrogant, muttered Commander Vor, captain of Malgus's personal guard. The Sith pureblood stood at attention, his red skin marked with ritual scars. He treats us like primitives awaiting an audience. Because to him, Malgus replied, perhaps we are. They emerged from hyperspace to find Korriban surrounded. Not blockaded, the Sith fleet still held orbital superiority, but observed. Thanos' ships maintained perfect formation at the system's edge, making no aggressive moves but projecting an unmistakable message: we are here. We are ready. We are not afraid. Malgus's shuttle descended toward the Valley of the Dark Lords, passing through sensor nets that mapped every weapon, every power cell, every heartbeat aboard his vessel. He felt the scans like fingers pressing against his skull, not the Force, but technology so advanced it might as well be sorcery. The shuttle landed 200 meters from Thanos' command structure. As the boarding ramp lowered, Malgus saw them waiting, ranks of soldiers in alien armor, perfectly still, weapons at rest but ready. And in the center, seated upon a throne that had been erected amidst the ruins of Tulak Horde's monument, sat Thanos himself. Malgus descended the ramp, his 20 guards flanking him, their lightsabers unignited but hands hovering near their hilts. The two forces regarded each other across blood-red sand, Sith Lord and Mad Titan, each a master of warfare in their own galaxy, each accustomed to submission from those they confronted. Thanos stood. The motion was unhurried, almost casual, but it carried the weight of avalanches. He descended from his throne and walked forward, stopping exactly 10 meters from Malgus, close enough to speak without shouting, far enough to react if violence erupted. You lead these warriors, Thanos said. It was not a question. I am Darth Malgus, Lord of the Sith Empire. His respirator clicked with each breath. You have violated our territory. Explain yourself before I demonstrate why that was unwise. Thanos tilted his head, studying Malgus the way a scholar might study an interesting insect. Sith. I have encountered your kind before, in the recordings we have studied. Force-sensitive warriors who embrace passion and power. He gestured to the tombs surrounding them. You build monuments to death. You cultivate fear. You believe strength justifies dominion. A pause. You are children playing with concepts you barely understand. The insult hung in the air like a drawn blade. Malgus's guard shifted, hands tightening on weapons. But Malgus himself remained perfectly still, his anger channeling into cold focus. Bold words from a trespasser. Your ships are impressive. Your soldiers, numerous. But you stand on Korriban, where the dark side flows like blood through veins. Here, your technology means nothing against the Force. The Force. Thanos spoke the word as though tasting something bitter. An energy field that binds your galaxy together. That grants you limited precognition, telekinesis, enhanced reflexes. I have reviewed the data. He raised one massive hand, examining it as though seeing it for the first time. In my universe, there are those who wield cosmic power. Beings who reshape reality with thought. Gods who transcend mortality. He looked directly at Malgus, and his eyes held something terrifying, pity. Your force is impressive by your standards. By mine, it is a tool. Nothing more. Then you are ignorant, Malgus said flatly. And ignorance in the dark side's presence is fatal. Perhaps. Thanos returned to his throne, settling back into it with the satisfaction of someone who had made his point. I did not come to your world to conquer it. Not yet. I came because your Korriban was the closest inhabited system to my arrival point. Needed time to study this galaxy, to understand its population distribution, its political structures, its capacity for survival. He steepled his fingers, a gesture that somehow communicated both patience and menace. I have learned much in 3 hours. This galaxy is at war. Republic against Empire. Jedi against Sith. Billions die in your conflict, and for what? Territory. Ideology. Pride. The strong devour the weak, Malgus replied. That is the way of nature. Of power. No, Thanos said, and for the first time, genuine emotion entered his voice, something almost like sorrow. That is the way of extinction. Unchecked growth. Unchecked conflict. Resources consumed until nothing remains but ash and regret. He stood again, and this time he walked closer, stopping just outside lightsaber range. I have seen civilizations destroy themselves through exactly this pattern. I have watched worlds burn because their people could not accept a simple truth: unlimited growth in finite space is suicide. Malgus felt something cold settle in his chest. What are you proposing? Balance, Thanos said simply. I will save this galaxy from itself. Half of all life, removed. Randomly. Fairly. Rich and poor, powerful and weak, Republic and Empire alike. The survivors will have resources to rebuild. Space to breathe. A future that extends beyond the next generation's wars. He met Malgus's gaze without flinching. I am not your enemy, Sith Lord. I am your salvation. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. You're insane, Malgus whispered. I am inevitable, Thanos corrected. The question before you is simple: will the Sith Empire resist this mercy and die with the unworthy? Or will you demonstrate the pragmatism your philosophy claims to embrace? Malgus's hand moved to his lightsaber hilt. Around him, his guards did the same, crimson blades igniting with a unified snap hiss that echoed across the valley. 20 Sith warriors, trained since childhood, empowered by the dark side, ready to die for their master. Thanos didn't even blink. I could kill you where you stand, Malgus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Whatever technology you possess, you cannot stop the Force itself from crushing your throat. You could try, Thanos agreed. And perhaps you would succeed. I am mortal, Lord Malgus. I bleed. I can die. He gestured to the ships overhead, to the armies waiting in perfect formation. But my vision does not die with me. My fleet will continue. My soldiers will execute the plan. And the Dark Council will face a choice: join me in bringing balance, or be balanced along with the rest. Malgus stood at a precipice. His entire philosophy, everything he believed about power and strength and the natural order, screamed at him to attack. To prove through violence that the Sith bowed to no one. But beneath that rage, in the part of his mind that had conquered armies and toppled governments, a cold calculation was occurring. This being meant every word. And if even half of what he claimed was true, resisting him might doom the Empire more surely than any Republic fleet. I will take your words to the Dark Council, Malgus said finally, his lightsaber still ignited. They will decide your fate. No, Thanos corrected gently. I will decide theirs. But I appreciate the courtesy of warning. He returned to his throne one final time. You have 48 hours. After that, I begin my work whether your empire cooperates or not. Choose wisely, Darth Malgus. Choose for the future of your people. Malgus turned without another word, striding back to his shuttle with his guards flanking him. But as the boarding ramp closed and the ship lifted toward orbit, he allowed himself one glance back at the valley below. Thanos still sat upon his throne, motionless as a statue, surrounded by ruins and alien soldiers and the lingering darkness of 1,000 dead Sith lords. And for the first time in his long, violent life, Darth Malgus felt something he had not experienced since he was a child on Dromund Kaas, staring up at the lightning-racked sky and wondering if the galaxy extended beyond the storm. He felt small. The Dark Council chamber on Dromund Kaas had witnessed countless debates over the centuries, arguments over military strategy, disputes over Sith philosophy, power struggles that left council seats permanently vacant. But the tension crackling through the circular room now was unlike anything in recent memory. 12 of the Empire's most powerful Sith lords sat in elevated thrones arranged in a perfect circle, their faces illuminated by the red glow of holographic displays that showed the same image on repeat: Thanos, seated among Korriban's ruins, speaking words that threatened to unravel everything they had built. Darth Malgus stood in the center of the circle, his respirator clicking steadily as he waited for the council to finish reviewing his report. Above him, the recording played again, Thanos' calm declaration of genocide dressed up as salvation, delivered with the certainty of mathematical proof. Half, Darth Ravage said finally, his ancient voice dripping with contempt. The human Sith Lord leaned forward in his throne, his face a roadmap of scars and ritual tattoos. This alien proposes to murder half the galaxy and expects us to assist him. Not murder, corrected Darth Marr, his voice modulated through the armor that completely encased him. He calls it culling. Balance. He believes unchecked growth leads to extinction, and therefore selective extermination becomes mercy. A pause. He is not entirely wrong. The chamber erupted in angry murmurs. Darth Vowron, ever the politician, raised one elegant hand for silence. Surely none present actually agree with this madness. The Titan speaks of balance, but what he describes is chaos. The destruction of half our infrastructure, half our military, half our workforce. The Empire would collapse within weeks. Would it? Malgus spoke for the first time since delivering his report. All eyes turned to him. Consider, the Republic faces the same reduction. Their fleets halved. Their Jedi numbers decimated. Their industrial capacity crippled. He began to pace, his cape sweeping across polished obsidian floors. If both sides lose equally, the balance of power remains unchanged. But the winner would be whoever recovers fastest, whoever adapts most efficiently to scarcity. You cannot be suggesting cooperation with this creature, Darth Aruk growled. The massive Sith purebloods' hands tightened on his throne's armrests. He arrives uninvited, threatens our entire civilization, and you propose we help him? I propose we consider all options, Malgus replied coolly. Rejecting his offer out of pride would be foolish if it leads to our annihilation. The Titan's fleet is vast. His technology, advanced. His soldiers, numerous and disciplined. He stopped pacing, facing the council directly. I tested him. Stood before him with 20 of my finest warriors, lightsabers drawn. He did not flinch. Did not call for reinforcements. Did not even reach for a weapon. He simply waited, as though my decision to attack or retreat was irrelevant to the outcome. Then he is overconfident, Darth Mortis said, her feminine voice sharp as a blade. Arrogance is a weakness we can exploit. Is it arrogance if he can deliver on his threats? Malgus countered. In the hours since our meeting, my intelligence network has gathered data. The Titan's ships have begun deploying smaller craft, scouts, we initially thought. But they are not scouts. They are census vessels. They are counting us. He activated his personal holoprojector, showing trajectories that spiderwebbed across the galaxy. Every inhabited system in the outer rim. Every colony in Hutt space. He is cataloging every life in this galaxy like a tax collector preparing assessments. Darth Hadra, the youngest member of the council, leaned forward with predatory interest. Then we know his movements. We know where his ships are. We strike now, before he completes his preparations. With what? Darth Marr's voice cut through the room like a funeral bell. Our fleets are engaged with Republic forces across 24 fronts. Withdrawing them to mass against this new threat would allow the Republic to seize territory we have spent years claiming. And even if we committed our full strength, he paused, and the silence spoke volumes. Lord Malgus. Your honest assessment. Could we defeat him? Malgus considered his answer carefully. The council needed truth, not reassurance. His technology is superior to ours in ways I do not yet fully understand. His soldiers fight with cohesion that suggests either absolute discipline or hive mind coordination. His fleet formations demonstrate tactical sophistication equal to our finest admirals. He met Marr's hidden gaze. Could we defeat him? Perhaps. With the full might of the Empire, with perfect coordination, with acceptable losses, he let the sentence hang. But it would cost us everything. And the Republic would step into the ashes of our victory unopposed. Then what do you recommend? Ravage demanded. Information, Malgus said. The Titan offered us 48 hours. I suggest we use them. Send diplomatic envoys. Learn more about his capabilities, his weaknesses, his true goals. Simultaneously, mobilize our fleets but position them defensively. And, he hesitated, knowing his next words would ignite controversy. And we open a back channel to the Republic. The chamber exploded. 3 council members rose from their thrones shouting. Darth Aruk's hand moved to his lightsaber. Only Darth Marr's raised hand and force presence, heavy as a collapsing star, restored order. Explain, Marr commanded. Malgus did not flinch from the dozen hostile gazes. The Titan threatened both sides equally. His vision of balance does not distinguish between Sith and Jedi, Empire and Republic. If he is truly as powerful as he appears, neither side can face him alone. But together, he let the implication settle. The enemy of my enemy is not my friend. But they can be my ally against a greater threat. Heresy, Vauron said, though his tone was more thoughtful than accusatory. The Empire does not negotiate from weakness. We would not be, Malgus countered. We would be proposing a temporary ceasefire against an existential threat. The Republic fears extinction as much as we do. Their precious Jedi, with all their force sensitivity and moral superiority, cannot stop an armada. And if we approach them first, we control the narrative. We appear strong, pragmatic. They appear desperate for our cooperation. Darth Mortis tilted her head, calculating. And after the Titan is defeated or repelled? The war resumes, Malgus said simply. But we resume it having studied Republic tactics in joint operations. Having catalogued their fleet positions. Having identified which Jedi and which commanders are most effective. A cold smile crept into his voice. We would be gathering intelligence even as we fight alongside them. The council fell silent, each member weighing the proposal against their own ambitions and assessments. Finally, Darth Marr spoke. Before we consider such drastic measures, I would speak with this Titan myself. Face to face. I would see if he can be reasoned with, threatened, or, he paused. Understood. Lord Malgus, you will accompany me to Korriban. The rest of the council will remain here, maintaining readiness for any outcome. And the Republic? Vauron asked. Lord Malgus has 48 hours from his initial contact, Marr calculated. We have approximately 30 remaining. I will take 24 to assess the Titan personally. If I determine cooperation or confederation is necessary, he looked around the chamber, meeting each council member's gaze in turn. Then we will do what the Sith have always done. We will survive. By any means necessary. 6 hours later, Darth Marr's personal dreadnought emerged from hyperspace above Korriban. The Sith Lord stood on the bridge, his armored form silhouetted against the viewport, watching as Thanos' fleet had grown. More ships had arrived, or been built, the sensor data was unclear. What had been dozens was now hundreds, spread across Korriban's orbit in patterns that suggested both defensive coverage and siege preparation. Lord Marr, the communications officer called out. We are receiving a transmission. Audio only. Source, the Titan's flagship. Play it. A voice filled the bridge, not Thanos, but feminine, precise, with an accent that belonged to no species in Imperial records. Sith vessel, you are cleared for landing at coordinates transmitted. The Titan will receive Darth Marr and his delegation. Weapons will be secured before disembarking. Any deviation from protocol will be considered hostile action and met with appropriate force. Marr's fists clenched. Beside him, Malgus spoke quietly. He dictates terms as though we have already surrendered. Because from his perspective, Marr replied, we already have. We returned. That alone signals we consider him a legitimate threat rather than a nuisance to be exterminated. He turned from the viewport. Prepare my shuttle. And Lord Malgus? When we meet this Titan, I want you to observe not his words, but his followers. I have commanded armies for decades. I know the difference between soldiers who serve from fear and those who serve from conviction. Whichever we find will tell us much about our enemy. The shuttle descended through Korriban's poisoned atmosphere, passing through the same intrusive scans Malgus had experienced before. But this time, Marr opened himself to the Force, letting his awareness expand, searching for any sense of the beings below. And found, confusion. The Titan himself remained an enigma, not a void, not a presence, but something the Force seemed uncertain how to categorize. Like trying to measure darkness with instruments designed for light. But his soldiers registered clearly, organic beings, most of them, but their minds were strange. Simplified. Purpose-driven to a degree that bordered on the fanatical but without the emotional volatility fanatics usually displayed. Zealots, Marr murmured as they landed. But zealots who have found peace in their faith. They disembarked to find Thanos had moved. No longer seated among the tombs, he now stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy itself, or rather, a version of it with overlays that marked every inhabited system in pulsing light. Population estimates floated beside each marker. Resource assessments. Strategic value calculations. The entire galaxy, reduced to data points awaiting judgment. Darth Marr, Thanos said without turning from his display. I am pleased the Dark Council sent someone with authority. Debating subordinates wastes time neither of us possesses. Marr walked forward, his armor servos whirring softly. Unlike Malgus's guards, who had stood at the ready, Marr came alone. A statement, I do not need soldiers to validate my power. You claim to bring balance, Marr said. I would understand what that means. Not the surface explanation you gave Lord Malgus. The philosophy beneath it. You speak of culling with the certainty of someone who has done this before. For the first time, Thanos turned to face them fully. And in his eyes, they saw it, the weight of genocides committed, worlds unmade, billions of lives ended by his direct order. This was no theoretical zealot. This was an executioner who had already bloodied his hands 1,000 times over. You want the truth? Thanos asked. I will give it to you, Sith Lord, because I believe you of all people might understand. He gestured to the galaxy map. I was born on Titan, a moon circling a gas giant in a distant system. Beautiful world. Advanced civilization. We achieved wonders, art, science, philosophy. We believed ourselves enlightened. His voice dropped, carrying the weight of ancient pain. Then came the resource crisis. Too many people. Not enough food. Not enough water. Not enough space. The Council of Minds debated solutions. Conservation. Rationing. Expansion to other worlds. He turned back to the map. I proposed something else. Something they called monstrous. Random selection. Half the population, removed painlessly. The survivors would have abundance. Titan would endure. They refused, Marr said. It wasn't a question. They called me mad. Exiled me. And within 2 generations, Titan collapsed. Civil war. Cannibalism. Extinction. Thanos' hands clenched into fists. I could have saved them. I would have saved them. But they chose comfortable lies over hard truth. So I made a vow, never again would I allow civilizations to destroy themselves through cowardice. I would bring balance to the universe, one world at a time, whether they thanked me or cursed me. Because in the end, results matter more than intentions. And you have done this? Malgus asked from behind Marr. Culled other worlds. 17 systems, Thanos confirmed. Each time, I removed exactly half. Randomly. Fairly. Rich and poor. Young and old. I did not spare myself pain. On some worlds, I executed children before their parents' eyes. I forced myself to witness every atrocity my salvation required. He met their gazes. 10 years later, I returned to each world. Do you know what I found? Silence. Prosperity. Gratitude. Civilizations that had been on the brink of collapse, now thriving. Parents who cursed me for taking their children now blessing my name because their grandchildren would never know starvation. Planets that had been wastelands of war, now gardens of peace. His voice carried absolute conviction. My method works. It is proven. It is necessary. Darth Marr stood motionless for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than hostile. You are not insane. That would be easier. Insanity can be dismissed. But you are not mad. You are certain. You have created a philosophy, tested it, and found it effective by your metrics. That makes you infinitely more dangerous than any Sith Lord driven by passion or rage. Does that mean you will oppose me? It means I will consider carefully what you propose, Marr replied. The Sith understand that power requires sacrifice. That difficult choices must be made. That the weak serve the strong, and the strong must sometimes cull their own weakness to survive. He gestured to the galaxy map. But what you propose is not culling weakness. You propose random extermination. A Sith Lord who has proven himself through combat and force mastery may die. While a merchant who has contributed nothing may live. That is not strength. That is chaos dressed as order. It is impartial, Thanos corrected. And impartiality is the only true fairness. The moment you introduce criteria, strength, worth, contribution, you introduce bias. Corruption. The powerful find ways to exempt themselves. The wealthy buy survival. The cunning manipulate the system. Only randomness ensures true balance. Then you fundamentally misunderstand power, Marr said flatly. No, Thanos replied. I understand it perfectly. Which is why I know it must be constrained by forces beyond its own control. He turned back to his map, manipulating controls that caused population markers to flicker and die in simulation. In 30 hours, I begin. The galaxy will learn what balance means. Your Emperor Vitiate hides in shadows, playing games with the Force and pursuing immortality. Your Republic fractures under bureaucratic weight. Your Jedi preach peace while enabling war. All of you, so consumed with your petty conflicts that you cannot see the cliff you race toward. And you believe you can save us, Marr said. I know I can. Thanos looked back over his shoulder. The question that remains is whether you will accept salvation, or whether you will force me to save you from yourselves. Either way, Darth Marr, the outcome is inevitable. I have crossed the void between universes pursuing this vision. I will not be turned aside by threats, philosophy, or force powers. I am inevitable. And balance will be achieved. Darth Marr studied the Titan for a long moment, his force senses probing, analyzing, calculating. Then he turned to Malgus and spoke two words that would echo through the Empire's history. Contact Coruscant. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant rose like a beacon of tranquility amidst the vertical sprawl of the galactic capital, its 5 spires reaching toward stars that most inhabitants never glimpsed through the perpetual haze of air traffic and industrial emissions. Within the temple's central meditation chamber, Jedi Master Satele Shan sat in perfect stillness, her mind extending through the Force in the ancient practice her ancestors had perfected millennia ago. Around her, 24 Jedi Masters maintained similar meditative states, their collective consciousness forming a web of awareness that stretched across known space. And through that web, something was screaming. Satele's eyes snapped open, breaking meditation with an abruptness that sent ripples through the assembled Masters. Around her, others were emerging from their trances with expressions of confusion and barely concealed alarm. Master Jarek Keaton, his Keldor breathing apparatus clicking softly, turned to her with concern evident even through his species' natural stoicism. You felt it too, he said. Not a question. A disturbance, Satele confirmed, rising to her feet with fluid grace despite the tension coiling through her muscles. But not like the ripples caused by Sith rituals or dark side corruption. This is foundational. As though reality itself has been wounded and is trying to heal. Master Bella Kiweeks, the Togruta who oversaw the temple's archaeological division, approached with a datapad clutched in her hands. Master Shan, we've been receiving fragmented reports from our outposts in the Outer Rim. Communications disruptions. Ships disappearing from scanners. And 3 hours ago, we lost all contact with our monitoring station in the Korriban system. The assembled Masters exchanged glances. Korriban, the ancient Sith burial world, perpetual thorn in the Republic's side, strategic location that changed hands with frustrating regularity throughout the ongoing war. Losing contact could mean anything from solar interference to Sith jamming to outright destruction. Have Republic intelligence confirmed the blackout? Satele asked. They're investigating now, but, Bella hesitated, her montrals twitching with uncertainty. Master Shan, the last transmission we received before the blackout contained sensor data that makes no sense. A spatial anomaly. Ships appearing from nowhere. And a biosignature reading that matches no known species in our databases. Before Satele could respond, the chamber doors burst open with enough force to override their automated protocols. A Republic officer, young, breathless, eyes wide with barely controlled panic, stumbled through, datapad extended like a weapon or a shield. Masters, he gasped. Forgive the intrusion, but, Supreme Chancellor Suresh demands your immediate presence in the Senate Strategic Operations Center. We've received a communication. From the Sith Empire. He swallowed hard. They're requesting a meeting. About a mutual threat. The meditation chamber fell silent. In 30 years of war, through countless battles and tentative truces, the Sith Empire had never initiated diplomatic contact with language like mutual threat. They conquered. They demanded. They occasionally negotiated from positions of overwhelming strength. But they did not request assistance. Show me the message, Satele commanded. The officer activated his datapad, projecting a hologram into the center of the chamber. The image resolved into the armored form of Darth Marr, his stance rigid with tension that even his full-body armor couldn't conceal. His modulated voice filled the room. To the Jedi Council and the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. I am Darth Marr of the Dark Council. 3 days ago, a spatial anomaly appeared above Korriban. From this anomaly emerged a fleet of unknown origin, commanded by an entity calling itself Thanos of Titan. This being has declared his intention to balance our galaxy through the systematic extermination of half of all sentient life. His timeline for implementing this genocide, 48 hours from initial contact. 21 of those hours have elapsed. Even hardened Jedi Masters shifted uneasily. Darth Marr's image continued. I do not make this contact lightly. The Empire and Republic are enemies. This is natural. This is understood. But this Titan recognizes no such distinctions. His proposed culling will affect both our civilizations equally. Neither side possesses sufficient military strength to repel his forces alone. Therefore, the Dark Council proposes an immediate ceasefire and temporary military alliance against this common threat. We will transmit coordinates for a neutral meeting location. Come prepared to discuss joint tactical operations. Or do not come, and we will all face extinction divided. The hologram flickered out. Master Jarek spoke first, his voice carefully controlled. This could be a trap. An elaborate deception to draw our fleets out of position. To what end? Master Bella countered. If they wanted to ambush our leadership, there are far simpler methods than fabricating an intergalactic crisis. Unless the crisis is real, Satele said quietly. All eyes turned to her. I felt the disturbance through the Force. Something unprecedented has entered our galaxy. And if Darth Marr, who has commanded Sith forces for decades, who has shown strategic brilliance in every engagement, is willing to openly request Republic assistance, she let the implication hang. Then the threat must be catastrophic. Or he believes we will perceive it as such, Master Jarek pressed. The Sith deal in deception as we deal in the Force. This entire scenario could be manufactured. Then we verify, Satele decided. I will go to the Senate. Brief Chancellor Suresh personally. While I am occupied there, I need a team dispatched to the Outer Rim. Quietly. Not a military force that might provoke Empire response, but Jedi investigators capable of gathering intelligence. I'll lead it, offered Master Kautzen Dirac, the Zobric weapons master who had trained many of the Temple's finest duelists. Take a small ship, avoid major hyperspace routes, approach Korriban's system from an oblique angle. If something is truly there, we'll confirm it. If this is Sith trickery, we'll uncover the deception before committing Republic resources. Satele nodded. Gather your team. Leave within the hour. And Master Cal, if you encounter this Thanos, do not engage. Observe. Record. Return with evidence. She turned to the assembled council. The rest of you, reach out through the Force. Contact our outposts, our operatives, anyone in the Outer Rim who might have information. I want to know everything about this spatial anomaly, these unknown ships, and this Titan who supposedly threatens our entire civilization. As the masters dispersed to their tasks, Satele remained standing in the center of the chamber, her mind reaching out once more through the Force. Seeking. Probing. trying to touch whatever had caused that terrible scream in the fabric of reality. And there, like a blind spot in her force vision, like a void that wasn't empty but dense, she felt it. Something vast. Something old. Something that carried with it the weight of absolute conviction and the cold mathematics of genocide dressed as mercy. "May the Force be with us all," she whispered. Supreme Chancellor Leontine Suresh paced the Strategic Operations Center like a caged Nexu, her Twi'lek Leku twitching with agitation as holographic displays cycled through military deployments, resource allocations, and intelligence reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. The circular chamber hummed with activity, admirals consulting tactical officers, senators arguing over procedural protocols, intelligence analysts cross-referencing Sith communications for signs of deception. Satele entered through the chamber's main doors, her Jedi robes a calm contrast to the military uniforms and political regalia surrounding her. Chancellor Suresh turned immediately, relief and suspicion warring in her expression. "Master Shan. Finally. Tell me this is some elaborate Sith manipulation. Tell me there isn't actually an alien warlord threatening to exterminate half the galaxy within the next day." "I cannot tell you that," Satele said simply. "The disturbance in the Force is real. The spatial anomaly is confirmed by multiple sources. And Darth Marr's communication displays genuine urgency rather than theatrical posturing." She approached the central holodable where a star map showed Republic and Empire territory in their familiar configuration, red and blue, locked in eternal conflict. "The question is not whether the threat exists. The question is whether we can trust the Sith to honor any agreement we make." "They won't," Admiral Kai snorted from his position at the tactical display. The grizzled human officer had fought Sith forces for 2 decades. "The moment this Titan is dealt with, if he even exists, the Empire will turn their weapons on us. We'd be fools to divide our attention. We'd be corpses if we don't," countered Senator Dallos Nervi, representing the industrial systems of Corellia. "Look at the numbers. Our fleet is stretched across 17 fronts. Our shipyards are operating at maximum capacity just to replace losses from normal operations. If an outside force with superior technology enters the equation," he gestured helplessly at the star map. "We don't have reserves. We don't have fallback positions. We're winning this war through attrition and Republic morale. Add a third variable, and the entire strategic framework collapses." Chancellor Suresh turned back to Satele. "From a Force perspective, Master Shan, what are we facing? Can this Titan be reasoned with? Intimidated? Defeated?" Satele considered her words carefully. "I cannot sense him directly. Whatever he is, the Force treats him as an anomaly, neither light nor dark, neither strong nor weak. Just, other. But I can sense the conviction radiating from that region of space. Someone who believes utterly in their righteousness, who has structured their entire existence around a singular purpose." She met the Chancellor's gaze. "Those are the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Not the ones driven by hate or greed, but the ones who have found peace in their atrocities. So we fight," Admiral Kai declared. "Or we listen," Satele countered. "The Sith have proposed a meeting. Neutral territory. Discussions of joint operations. We attend that meeting, not with trust, but with awareness. We learn what they know. We assess the threat's validity. And then we decide whether cooperation serves the Republic better than isolated resistance. And if it's a trap?" Suresh demanded. "Then we spring it carefully," Satele replied. "I will attend the meeting personally. I am not easily killed, and my death would not cripple the Republic's command structure. Accompany me with military advisors, intelligence officers, and contingency plans. Show the Sith we take their warning seriously while demonstrating we are not naive enough to lower our guard." Chancellor Suresh stood in thought for a long moment, the weight of galactic leadership evident in the lines of her face. Around the chamber, conversations had died as everyone waited for her decision. Finally, she nodded. Admiral Kai, prepare a task force. Small enough to avoid appearing as an invasion fleet, large enough to defend itself if this goes sideways. Senator Nervi, draft contingency legislation for emergency resource reallocation. If we're committing to joint operations with the Sith, I want constitutional authority established before questions arise in the Senate. She turned to Satele. Master Shan, you will represent the Republic at this meeting. Determine the validity of the Sith claims. If this Titan exists, assess his capabilities. If possible, make contact and determine his intentions beyond the propaganda of balance. Report back within 12 hours. Understood, Chancellor. As Satele turned to leave, Suresh called after her. Master Shan. One more thing. If this threat is real, if we genuinely face extinction-level danger, she hesitated, struggling with words that went against every political instinct. Prioritize Republic survival over Sith containment. I authorize flexibility in your negotiations. Satele stopped, turning back slowly. You're giving me permission to ally with the Empire. I'm giving you permission to do whatever is necessary to ensure the Republic endures, Suresh corrected. Even if it means temporarily standing alongside our greatest enemies. The two women held each other's gaze, politician and Jedi, both carrying burdens that would have crushed lesser beings. Then Satele bowed with precise formality. May the Force guide us to wisdom rather than expedience. At this point, Suresh replied wearily, I'll settle for survival. 6 hours later, Master Satele Shan stood on the bridge of the Republic frigate Steadfast Defender, watching through the viewport as hyperspace's blue tunnel collapsed into the familiar starfield of the Balmorra system. The world below was neutral territory, technically independent, practically dominated by whoever currently held orbital superiority. Today, that distinction was irrelevant. Both Republic and Empire had agreed to meet here, in orbit above a world that had suffered under both their occupations, as if the location itself was a reminder of what mutual destruction looked like. The Sith arrived first. 3 dreadnoughts, their crimson hulls painted with the Empire's sigil, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. No weapons charged. No fighters deployed. A clear message, we came to talk, not fight. For now. Receiving transmission, the communications officer reported. Audio only. It's Darth Marr. Play it. Master Shan. Marr's modulated voice carried none of the mockery or contempt typically present in Sith communications with Jedi. I am transmitting coordinates for a shuttle rendezvous. Abandoned orbital station, Sector 7. My delegation will consist of myself, Lord Malgus, and 2 guards. I recommend you bring equivalent numbers. What we discuss today is too important for armies. Satele considered the proposal. An orbital station, confined space, limited escape routes, perfect ambush location. Or perfect neutral ground, where neither side could bring overwhelming force to bear. She made her decision. Agreed. We will meet you there in 20 minutes. The shuttle ride was tense. Satele sat in meditation, preparing herself mentally for whatever awaited. Beside her, Master Jarek Keaton had returned from his reconnaissance mission to the Outer Rim with disturbing news, massive energy readings in Korriban's orbit, ships that didn't match any known configuration, and strangest of all, coordinated fleet movements that suggested an invasion force preparing for deployment. Not positioning for defense. For attack. When their shuttle docked with the abandoned station, Satele felt it immediately, the dark side presence of 2 of the Empire's most powerful Sith Lords, concentrated in a single location. Under normal circumstances, this would be an opportunity to strike at the Empire's leadership. Today, it was proof of how seriously they took this threat. The station's central meeting chamber was a stripped-down cargo bay, long abandoned, its walls still bearing scorch marks from whatever conflict had rendered it useless. Darth Marr and Darth Malgus stood on one side, flanked by 2 Imperial guards whose armor bore the marks of elite training. Satele entered from the opposite entrance, accompanied by Master Jarek and 2 Republic commandos whose fingers hovered near their blasters. The two sides regarded each other across 10 meters of empty space. Enemies who had killed each other's soldiers by the thousands. Leaders who had ordered strikes that left worlds burning. Philosophical opposites who had spent decades proving through violence that their way was right. And now, potentially, reluctant allies. Master Shan, Darth Marr said, inclining his head in something that might have been respect. Thank you for coming. I recognize the difficulty of this meeting. As do I, Satele replied. Lord Marr, Lord Malgus. Before we proceed, I must know, is this threat genuine? Or are we wasting time we could spend defending against a fabrication? It is genuine, Malgus said, his respirator clicking with intensity. I have stood before this Titan. Spoken with him. Felt the absence where his mind should register in the Force. He is real. His fleet is real. And his conviction that genocide equals mercy is disturbingly, absolutely real. Satele studied both Sith Lords through the Force. She felt no deception, only a tension that came from warriors accustomed to combat, not diplomacy. Tell me everything. Leave nothing out. If we are to face this together, I must understand what we face. And so, in that abandoned station above a world that had suffered under both their flags, the Sith told the Jedi about the mad Titan who had come to save the galaxy by destroying it. The holographic display materialized between the two factions, projected from Darth Malgus's personal datapad, footage captured during his first encounter with Thanos. Satele watched in silence as the purple-skinned giant spoke with calm certainty about culling half the galaxy, his words delivered with the measured cadence of someone reciting mathematical proofs rather than announcing mass murder. When the recording ended, the chamber fell into heavy silence broken only by the station's failing life support systems cycling stale air. He believes every word, Satele said finally. This is not posturing or psychological warfare. He has constructed a complete moral framework that justifies genocide as salvation. She looked to Darth Marr. You said he claimed to have done this before. To other worlds. 17 systems, Marr confirmed. He described them in detail, population numbers before and after culling, resource consumption metrics, societal stability indices. Either he is the most elaborate liar in galactic history, or he has genuinely exterminated billions and returned years later to verify his methodology was effective. Master Jarek's breathing apparatus clicked rapidly. The Force would reveal such deception. But I sense none from your account. Which means we face something unprecedented, a being from beyond our galaxy who has perfected the logistics of mass extinction and believes himself righteous for it. More than that, Malgus interjected, pacing with barely contained energy. His technology is sophisticated beyond Imperial or Republic standards. His soldiers move with precision that suggests either absolute discipline or some form of neural coordination. And his census vessels, he activated another hologram showing ship trajectories spiderwebbing across the galaxy. He is cataloging every inhabited system. Counting populations down to statistical margins of error. Preparing a targeting list. Satele felt cold settle in her chest. How long before he completes this census? 27 hours, Darth Marr said. After which, if his timeline holds, he begins implementation. And we have no intelligence on what implementation actually means. Biological weapons. Orbital bombardment. Some technology we cannot yet comprehend. He turned to face Satele directly. That is why we contacted you, Master Shan. Separately, our civilizations lack the strength to resist. United, we might force him to reconsider. Or at least extract concessions. Concessions, Satele repeated, her voice sharp. You speak as though negotiating how many billions die is an acceptable outcome. It is a pragmatic outcome, Malgus shot back, his anger flaring. Would you prefer we make no attempt at dialogue? That we simply watch as he exterminates our people while we maintain our moral superiority? He stepped forward, closing the distance between them, his respirator hissing with each breath. The Jedi preach peace but enable war through inaction. Here is a war we cannot avoid through meditation and philosophy. So choose, Master Shan, will you fight alongside the Sith against extinction? Or will you let the galaxy burn because cooperating with the dark side offends your principles? Enough, Darth Marr commanded, his force presence pressing down like a physical weight. Malgus stepped back, but the tension remained. Marr turned back to Satele. Lord Malgus is passionate in his assessment. But his core point stands. We need a unified response. The Dark Council has authorized me to propose a formal ceasefire, all hostilities suspended, all military operations halted, all resources redirected toward this common threat. The question is whether the Republic will accept. Satele closed her eyes, reaching out through the Force for guidance. She felt the currents of destiny swirling, probability branches splitting and splitting again based on decisions made in this moment. Down one path, she saw Republic and Empire fleets burning separately, picked apart by superior technology and ruthless efficiency. Down another, she saw the two civilizations standing together, lightsabers and force lightning combining against a common enemy, their ancient hatred temporarily subsumed beneath survival instinct. Both paths led to terrible losses. Only one offered hope of victory. I cannot speak for the Supreme Chancellor or the Senate, Satele said, opening her eyes. But I can speak as a Jedi Master who has served the Republic for 30 years and fought your Empire across 100 battlefields. If this threat is genuine, and I believe it is, then temporary alliance is not betrayal of our principles. It is adherence to the most fundamental principle, preservation of life. She met Marr's hidden gaze. The Jedi Council will support a ceasefire. But we have conditions. Name them, Marr said. First, all intelligence regarding Thanos and his forces will be shared completely. No strategic withholding, no deception for future advantage. If we fight together, we must trust each other's data even if we cannot trust each other's motives. Agreed, Marr said without hesitation. Second, command structure must be clearly defined. Republic and Imperial forces will maintain separate chains of command, but tactical coordination requires someone to make final decisions. I propose a joint council, Jedi Masters and Dark Council members, advised by military commanders from both sides. Decisions requiring 3/4 majority to prevent deadlock. Darth Malgus scoffed. That will slow response times when rapid decision-making is crucial. Then we appoint field commanders with operational autonomy, Satele countered. The Joint Council sets strategic objectives. Individual commanders execute tactics as they see fit within those parameters. Marr considered this acceptable. Third condition. Protection of civilian populations takes priority over military objectives, Satele said firmly. If Thanos targets inhabited worlds, evacuation and defense of those worlds supersedes all other concerns. We are not sacrificing systems to preserve fleet strength. Now it was Darth Marr who hesitated. That condition is problematic. From a military standpoint, some losses may be necessary to achieve victory. Then we have no alliance, Satele said flatly. I will not cooperate in abandoning Republic citizens to save Imperial military assets. If the Dark Council cannot commit to protecting all lives, Sith, Jedi, civilian, soldier, then we fight separately and face the consequences. The two Sith Lords exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them, facilitated perhaps by the Force or simply the understanding of warriors who had fought together for decades. Finally, Marr spoke. The Dark Council will accept your third condition with one caveat. Strategic retreats that temporarily abandon territory to save forces for counterattack are not violations of this principle. We will not sacrifice fleets in suicidal defenses when tactical withdrawal serves greater survival. Agreed, Satele said. Provided those retreats include civilian evacuation when possible. Acceptable. Master Jarek stepped forward, his voice careful. There is another concern. Thanos spoke of balance through random selection. If he possesses technology capable of implementing truly random culling across the entire galaxy simultaneously, he trailed off, the implications too terrible to voice fully. Then preparing defenses is insufficient, Malgus finished. We must strike first. Locate his command vessel, his staging areas, his supply lines. Destroy his capacity to execute his plan before he begins. A preemptive assault on a superior force in defensive positions, Darth Marr said thoughtfully. Tactically inadvisable. Casualties would be catastrophic. Less catastrophic than losing half our populations, Malgus countered. Satele raised one hand. Before we commit to any military action, someone must attempt diplomatic contact. The Jedi way is to exhaust all peaceful options before drawing weapons. We tried that, Malgus said sharply. I spoke with him. So did Lord Marr. He is immovable. You spoke as Sith Lords, Satele replied. Representatives of a philosophy built on domination and power. Perhaps he will respond differently to Jedi principles. To appeals based on compassion, on the sanctity of life, on weakness? Malgus interrupted. Master Shan, this Titan respects strength. He dismissed our threats because he calculated our military capacity and found it insufficient. Your Jedi pacifism will not sway someone who has already murdered billions in service of his vision. Perhaps not, Satele acknowledged. But I must try. If there is even the smallest chance of resolving this without galactic war, I am obligated to pursue it. She turned to Darth Marr. Grant me safe passage to Korriban. Arrange a meeting with Thanos. If he refuses to alter his course, if he proves as immovable as you claim, then I will stand beside you in the coming battle. But let me try. Darth Marr stood silent for a long moment, his armored form a statue of contemplation. When he spoke, his voice carried grudging respect. You Jedi are either the bravest beings in the galaxy or the most foolish. I cannot decide which. Very well, Master Shan. I will contact Thanos and request an audience on your behalf. But understand, if he takes you hostage, uses you as leverage, or simply kills you to make a point about the futility of your philosophy, he paused. The alliance will continue without you. Your sacrifice, however noble, will not stop what comes next. I understand, Satele said. And I accept the risk. The communications array crackled to life, broadcasting on frequencies Darth Marr's technicians had identified as belonging to Thanos' fleet. The transmission was simple, direct. Thanos of Titan. This is Darth Marr of the Sith Empire. A representative of the Jedi Order requests audience with you. She comes not with threats or military posturing, but to understand your philosophy and explore possibilities for resolution that do not require galactic genocide. Will you receive her? Silence answered for 13 seconds. Then a different voice, feminine, cold, precise, responded. The Titan will receive this Jedi. She may bring 2 attendants, unarmed. Her ship will be escorted to the surface by our fighters. Any deviation from approach vectors will be interpreted as hostile action. She has 6 hours to arrive. After that, the offer expires and the Titan's schedule proceeds uninterrupted. The transmission cut. Satele turned to her companions. Master Jarek, return to the steadfast defender. Coordinate with Admiral Kai on defensive deployments. If my mission fails, the Republic must be ready. She looked to the 2 Sith Lords. And you should prepare the Empire. Position your fleets but avoid provocative movements. We have one chance to avoid war with a force we barely understand. Let us not waste it through impatience. One more thing, Darth Malgus said as Satele turned to leave. When she looked back, she found him studying her with an expression that might have been respect or calculation or both. When you meet the Titan, look into his eyes. Not with force sensitivity. With simple observation. I have fought many enemies, Master Shan. Sith lords drunk on dark power. Jedi blinded by their own righteousness. Republic soldiers terrified but determined. And in all of them, I saw something: doubt, fear, hope. Some shred of uncertainty beneath their convictions. His respirator clicked. In Thanos, I saw nothing. Only absolute certainty. Remember that when he speaks of mercy. He believes he is saving us. That makes him infinitely more dangerous than any Sith who merely wants to rule. Satele nodded slowly. Thank you for the warning, Lord Malgus. I will remember. As she departed the station, returning to her shuttle with Master Jarek beside her, the Keldor Jedi spoke quietly. You truly believe you can reason with this being? After everything the Sith described? No, Satele admitted. I believe Thanos is exactly as Lord Malgus described, a being of absolute conviction who has found peace in atrocity. But I must try. Because if I do not exhaust every peaceful option, then when war comes, and it will come, I will carry the knowledge that I could have done more. She settled into the shuttle's pilot seat, her hands steady on the controls despite the weight pressing against her chest. The Force teaches that all life is precious. If I abandon that teaching when it becomes difficult, then what are we fighting to preserve? Master Jarek said nothing. But as they detached from the station and accelerated toward the waiting Republic frigate, he placed one hand on her shoulder in silent support. Behind them, on the station's observation deck, Darth Marr and Darth Malgus watched the shuttle depart. She will fail, Malgus said. The Titan will listen politely, then dismiss her philosophy as the naive idealism of primitives. Probably, Marr agreed. But there is value in her attempt. It establishes that we tried diplomacy. When the galaxy learns what comes next, when worlds burn and billions die, history will record that both Jedi and Sith sought peaceful resolution before committing to total war. He turned from the viewport. And that narrative will be useful when we must unify our civilizations against this threat. You think like a politician, Malgus observed. I think like a survivor, Marr corrected. Which is what we must all become if we are to outlast the Mad Titan's vision of balance. Above Balmorra, Republic and Imperial fleets began coordinating for the first time in 30 years. Encrypted communications channels opened. Tactical data streamed across once hostile networks. Officers who had spent careers trying to destroy each other now studied shared intelligence on an enemy neither side fully understood. And on Korriban, Thanos sat upon his throne watching sensors track the approaching Jedi shuttle, his expression unreadable as stone. Shall I prepare the audience chamber? His lieutenant asked. Yes, Thanos replied. And transmit updated census data to all fleet elements. The Jedi's arrival does not alter our schedule. Balance will be achieved. Whether they accept it peacefully or resist violently is their choice. But the outcome, he stood, his massive frame silhouetted against Korriban's dying red sun. The outcome is inevitable. Satele's shuttle descended through Korriban's blood-red atmosphere with an escort of 6 alien fighters that moved with unsettling synchronization. The craft were sleek, angular things that bore no resemblance to Republic or Imperial designs, more organic than mechanical, as though grown rather than built. Their weapon systems tracked her shuttle with passive sensors, not threatening but absolutely vigilant. One wrong move, one deviation from the transmitted flight path, and she had no doubt they would fire without hesitation or remorse. She piloted the shuttle herself, having dismissed her usual crew. Only 2 companions accompanied her, Master Jarek Keaton, whose decades of diplomatic experience might prove valuable, and surprisingly, a young Jedi Knight named Kira Carson who had requested permission to join. Satele had initially refused. This mission required experience, not youthful idealism. But Kira had pressed her case with unusual intensity. Master Shan, I've spent my life reading people. It's my gift, even beyond the Force. I can sense when someone's lying, when they're holding back, when they're about to snap. The young woman's eyes had held unexpected steel. You need someone who can read Thanos not as a force user or a military threat, but as a person. Let me come. Satele had relented. Now, as the Valley of the Dark Lords appeared below them, transformed from ancient Sith burial ground into an alien military installation, she wondered if bringing a Padawan into this darkness was wisdom or folly. Mother of Light, Kira whispered, pressing her face against the viewport. Look at it. The valley had been utterly transformed. Where once crumbling tombs and weathered statues had stood in testament to long-dead Sith lords, now sleek fortifications rose like metallic fungi. Construction drones, thousands of them, worked in perfect coordination, assembling structures that seemed to shift and adapt even as Satele watched. Energy barriers shimmered in hexagonal patterns. Massive weapons emplacements tracked their descent with mechanical precision. And everywhere, soldiers in alien armor stood in formations so perfect they might have been carved from the same stone as the tombs they had displaced. This is 3 days of work. Master Jarek asked, his voice hollow with disbelief. The engineering alone should have taken weeks. Months. They're not building for permanence, Satele observed, her pilot's instincts analyzing the structures. These are siege fortifications. Everything is modular, rapidly deployable, designed for function over aesthetics. They're preparing for assault, not occupation. The escort fighters guided them to a landing platform that hadn't existed during Darth Malgus's visit. As the shuttle settled onto durasteel plating that still radiated heat from recent fabrication, Satele extended her awareness through the Force, seeking to understand what awaited them. And found confusion. The soldiers registered as living beings, organic, breathing, thinking, but their minds were strange. Simple in architecture but absolutely focused, like tools honed to a single purpose. No fear. No ambition. No doubt. Just duty executed with the precision of droids but the adaptability of sentient beings. And beyond them, that void that wasn't void. Thanos. Dense as a collapsed star, his presence creating a gravitational well in the Force that neither pulled toward light nor dark but simply was. Stay close, Satele instructed as the boarding ramp lowered. Remember, we are here to understand, not to fight. Whatever he says, whatever he shows us, maintain composure. We are Jedi. We serve the Force, and the Force teaches patience. They descended into an atmosphere thick with dark side energy, Korriban's native corruption amplified by centuries of Sith rituals. But cutting through that familiar darkness was something else, the scent of alien metal, the hum of technology that operated on principles Satele didn't recognize, and the complete absence of any sound beyond mechanical efficiency. No voices. No casual conversations among soldiers. Just the whisper of recycled air and the click of armored boots on polished surfaces. An honor guard waited, 6 soldiers whose armor bore markings suggesting rank or specialization. They were humanoid but wrong somehow, their proportions slightly off, their movements too fluid, their eyes reflecting light in ways human eyes did not. Jedi delegates, one spoke, its voice feminine but emotionless. Follow. Do not deviate. The Titan awaits. They walked through corridors that bent reality around them. Satele couldn't explain it better than that, the geometry was wrong, spaces larger inside than their external dimensions suggested, corners that turned at angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Kira stumbled twice, her spatial awareness confused by architecture that defied standard physics. Advanced dimensional compression, Master Jarek muttered, his scientific mind trying to rationalize the impossible. They're folding space itself to maximize internal volume. The energy requirements alone should be impossible by our standards, Satele finished quietly. Remember that. Everything here operates beyond our technological framework. We are the primitives Lord Marr warned about. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that made Satele's breath catch despite her Jedi training. The room stretched upward at least 50 meters, its ceiling lost in shadow. Holographic displays filled the space like three-dimensional constellations, each one showing a different star system, population count scrolling beside planetary designations. Coruscant, 1.2 trillion. Drahman Kos, 847 billion. Alderaan, 2.3 billion. System after system, world after world, every inhabited location in the known galaxy catalogued and assessed with clinical precision. And in the center of this constellation of potential death, seated upon a throne that made the ancient Sith burial monuments outside look like children's toys, was Thanos. He was even more imposing in person than holographic recordings suggested. 3 meters of purple-skinned muscle wrapped in golden armor that bore scars from battles Satele couldn't begin to imagine. His face was weathered but not old, timeless, ageless, carved from conviction rather than genetics. And those eyes. Lord Malgus had warned her, but the reality exceeded the warning. Eyes that held the accumulated weight of civilizations saved through extinction, of mercy delivered through genocide, of absolute certainty untainted by doubt or regret. He stood as they approached, not a gesture of respect, but of acknowledgement. Equals meeting, regardless of the power differential. Master Satele Shan, Thanos said, his voice resonating through the chamber like distant thunder. Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Hero of the Republic. I have studied your history. Your accomplishments are impressive by your civilization's standards. He descended from his throne with measured steps. You come seeking to change my mind. To appeal to compassion, mercy, the sanctity of life. You believe words can succeed where military threats failed. I come seeking to understand, Satele replied, refusing to be intimidated despite every instinct screaming at her to flee or fight. You speak of balance. Of saving civilizations. Yet you propose mass murder on a scale that defies comprehension. I would know how someone can hold both concepts as truth. Thanos stopped 3 meters away, close enough for conversation, far enough to react if violence erupted. Behind him, Satele sensed more guards in the shadows, weapons ready but not aimed. This being took no chances, trusted no one, but maintained the illusion of diplomatic courtesy. You call it murder, Thanos said. I call it surgery. When a limb becomes gangrenous, you amputate to save the body. When a population exceeds sustainable capacity, you reduce to save the species. The mathematics are simple. Resources are finite. Growth is exponential. Unchecked, every civilization follows the same trajectory. Expansion, overconsumption, collapse, extinction. Then expand resources, Kira interjected, unable to contain herself despite Satele's warning glance. Colonize new worlds. Develop better technology. Find solutions that don't require killing billions. Thanos turned his gaze to the young Jedi, and Kira visibly flinched. I have seen 1,000 civilizations make that argument. We will adapt. We will innovate. We will find another way. Do you know what happens? He gestured to the holographic displays surrounding them. They colonize until they run out of habitable worlds. They innovate until they exhaust the innovations that matter. They adapt until adaptation becomes another word for slow starvation. He returned his attention to Satele. I offer a different solution. Painful. Immediate. Permanent. Half the population, removed instantly and painlessly. The survivors inherit abundance. Resource pressures vanish overnight. Wars of scarcity become unnecessary. Future generations are saved from the cycle of desperation their ancestors would have condemned them to. At the cost of trillions of lives, Master Jarek said quietly. Families destroyed. Civilizations traumatized. Entire cultures potentially erased if the random selection falls disproportionately on small populations. Acceptable losses, Thanos replied without hesitation. Measured against the alternative, total extinction within 3 generations, temporary trauma is a small price. And I do not distinguish. Rich and poor. Strong and weak. young and old. The selection is random because only randomness is truly fair. No one can claim exemption based on merit or influence. Everyone shares the burden equally. Satele felt cold rage building beneath her calm exterior. This being spoke of genocide with the detachment of an accountant balancing ledgers. Lives reduced to numbers. Suffering dismissed as statistical anomaly. And beneath it all, that terrible, immovable certainty. You have done this before, she said, keeping her voice level. You claimed 17 systems. Show me proof. Show me these prosperous civilizations you saved through slaughter. For the first time, something like emotion crossed Thanos' face. Pride? Satisfaction? It vanished too quickly to categorize. He gestured, and the holographic displays shifted, showing worlds Satele didn't recognize. Alien cities. Strange biologies. Civilizations utterly foreign to her experience. Gamora Prime, Thanos narrated as images of a green-skied world appeared. Population 14 billion, declining rapidly due to resource depletion. I culled 7 billion. 10 years later, the image shifted to show the same world, but transformed. Cities rebuilt. Agriculture flourishing. Populations healthy and stable. They erected monuments to my intervention. Called me savior. Another world appeared. Then another. Each one showing the same pattern, devastation followed by recovery, trauma followed by gratitude. 17 systems, just as he had claimed, each one a testament to his methodology's effectiveness. I could fabricate such evidence, Satele said, though her force senses detected no deception. You could, Thanos agreed. But you won't. Because you can feel the truth, even if your philosophy rebels against accepting it. These worlds thrived because I made the decision their leaders could not. I bore the burden of moral certainty so they could live with grateful ignorance. You're insane, Kira breathed. No, Thanos corrected gently. Insanity is watching civilizations destroy themselves repeatedly and believing the next one will somehow be different without intervention. I am the only sane being in a universe committed to its own extinction. He turned back to Satele. You came here hoping to find doubt. Some crack in my conviction you could exploit through Jedi wisdom. You found none because there is none. I have spent millennia pursuing this vision. I have perfected the methodology. I have proven its effectiveness across civilizations with nothing in common except their mortality. And now I bring that salvation to your galaxy, whether you accept it or oppose it. Satele stepped forward, closing the distance between them to mere meters. This close, she could feel the absolute absence of force signature more clearly, not a void but a density, like staring into a black hole that light could not escape. She looked up into those implacable eyes and spoke with all the conviction 3 decades of Jedi service had instilled in her. I have stood on battlefields where thousands died. I have made decisions that sent soldiers to their deaths for strategic necessity. I understand sacrifice. I understand that sometimes preservation of greater life requires difficult choices. She let her force presence expand, filling the chamber with light-side energy in direct opposition to Korriban's inherent darkness. But what you propose is not sacrifice. It is not even war. It is systematic extinction based on mathematical convenience. You reduce living beings, each with dreams, fears, loves, hopes, to variables in an equation. That is not salvation, Thanos of Titan. That is the ultimate expression of tyranny, forcing your vision of mercy upon those who never asked for it and can never refuse. Silence fell. The guards in the shadows shifted. The holographic displays pulsed with frozen population data. And Thanos stood perfectly still, studying her with the intensity of someone examining an interesting but ultimately irrelevant curiosity. You speak with conviction, he said finally. I respect that. But conviction without power is merely noise. Tell me, Master Shan, if I proceed with balance, if I begin the culling as scheduled, what will you do? Will you and your Jedi stand against me? Will you rally your Republic and that pathetic Sith Empire in united resistance? He leaned forward slightly, and Satele felt the weight of his presence like gravity increasing. Will you sacrifice your principles, ally with your darkest enemies, commit to total warfare against a force you cannot comprehend, and still fail to stop the inevitable? Because that is what awaits. Resistance means only that you suffer more before accepting salvation. Then you give us no choice, Satele replied. If you cannot be reasoned with, cannot be swayed by appeals to compassion or justice or the very concept of free will, then yes. The Jedi will stand against you. The Republic will marshal every ship, every soldier, every resource. And we will convince the Empire that their survival depends on joining us. We will forge an alliance from ancient enemies because you have given us no other option. Good, Thanos said, and impossibly, he smiled. I hoped you would say that. Because civilizations that surrender without resistance are not worthy of survival. But those that fight, even when defeat is certain, demonstrate the strength that makes their continued existence valuable. He returned to his throne, settling into it like a king addressing petitioners. You have 24 hours remaining before I begin. Use them wisely. Gather your fleets. Unite your factions. Make whatever preparations your combined resources allow. And know this, when balance comes, you will understand that everything I do with purpose. With necessity. With love for the future you cannot yet see. Love? Kira's voice cracked with disbelief. You call genocide love? I call it the ultimate act of mercy, Thanos replied. The universe is cruel. Entropy is inevitable. Every civilization races toward its own extinction. I am the only force standing between existence and oblivion, willing to bear the burden of hard truths. If that is not love, sacrificing my own peace, accepting eternal condemnation from those I save, then the word has no meaning. Satele turned away, unable to look at him any longer without her Jedi composure cracking entirely. We're leaving. We've heard enough. One moment, Thanos said, his voice stopping her at the chamber's entrance. When she turned back, he had descended from his throne again, holding something in his massive hand. A data crystal, glowing with soft blue light. Take this. Study its contents. It contains my full methodology, population calculations, resource assessments, implementation protocols. I offer it because I want you to understand. When balance is achieved, when half your galaxy learns to thrive with the abundance I provide, you will remember this conversation. And you will realize I was right. Satele stared at the offered crystal with revulsion. To take it felt like accepting complicity in atrocity. But to refuse meant losing intelligence that might reveal weaknesses, vulnerabilities, some exploitable flaw in his plan. She took it. May the Force have mercy on your soul, she said quietly. Because we will not. The Force, Thanos repeated, as though tasting something bitter. An energy field that binds your galaxy. I have studied it extensively since arriving. Do you know what I find most fascinating? He returned to his throne one final time. It claims to guide destiny, to provide balance between light and dark. Yet your galaxy has been at war for millennia. Jedi and Sith, locked in eternal conflict, each side convinced they serve balance while perpetuating chaos. Your force has failed you, Master Shan. I will succeed where it has not. Satele said nothing more. She turned and walked from the chamber, her companions following in stunned silence. Behind them, Thanos watched their departure with the patient satisfaction of someone who had played out this conversation 1,000 times across 1,000 worlds. They always resisted at first. They always fought back with words and weapons and desperate hope. And they always, eventually, understood that resistance was futile. Balance was inevitable. And inevitability could not be stopped by conviction alone. The Joint Command Center assembled on Carrick Station, a massive Republic orbital facility positioned in neutral space between core and mid-rim territories. Within 8 hours of Satele's return from Korriban, representatives from both civilizations had gathered in a chamber that had never witnessed such an assemblage, Jedi Masters standing beside Sith Lords, Republic admirals coordinating with Imperial commanders, political leaders from both governments attempting to navigate diplomacy with their most bitter enemies while facing an existential threat neither fully understood. The tension was suffocating. Satele stood at the central holotable, the data crystal from Thanos displayed before her like a contaminated artifact. Around the circular chamber, the assembled leaders watched the projection with expressions ranging from horror to calculated interest to barely concealed fury. Thanos's methodology unfolded in cold mathematical precision, population density algorithms, resource consumption projections, societal stability matrices. He had reduced galactic genocide to an engineering problem, complete with efficiency calculations and acceptable margin of error percentages. The final implementation protocol was particularly chilling, a device he called the Decimator, capable of generating a field that would simultaneously affect every inhabited system in the galaxy, selecting precisely half of all sentient life for instantaneous, painless disintegration. "This is madness," Supreme Chancellor Suresh whispered, her leku trembling. "He's catalogued every world, every species, every population center down to decimal points. My homeworld, Taris, he estimates 847 million inhabitants." "Mine as well," Darth Vauron said from across the table, his aristocratic composure strained. "Zayist. 1.2 billion imperial citizens reduced to 600 million. Essential infrastructure workers, military personnel, government officials, all subject to random selection. The Empire would collapse within days. As would the Republic," Admiral Kai added grimly. "Our fleets are already stretched thin. Losing half our crew complements, half our engineers, half our logistics personnel," he shook his head. "We'd be defenseless even if we survived the initial culling." Darth Marr's modulated voice cut through the rising panic. "Then we ensure the culling never occurs. Thanos has provided us with complete intelligence on his methodology. We use it against him. Identify weaknesses in his technology, vulnerabilities in his deployment strategy, critical points where disruption could cascade into failure." "There are no weaknesses," came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. All eyes turned to see a figure in weathered robes approaching, Master Kautzen Dirac, who had spent the last 3 days conducting reconnaissance of Thanos' fleet. The Zabrak Jedi Master looked haunted, his usually fierce demeanor subdued by what he had witnessed. "I infiltrated their perimeter. Got close enough to scan their command vessel with advanced sensors. The ship's hull is constructed from materials we cannot identify. Its energy signature operates on principles our best scientists cannot explain. And its defensive systems," he paused, gathering himself. "I watched them engage a Republic patrol that strayed too close. 6 corvettes. The Titan's automated defenses destroyed them in 47 seconds. No warning shots. No negotiation. Just ruthless, absolute efficiency. Then we hit them with overwhelming force," Darth Malgus declared, slamming his fist on the holotable. "Commit every dreadnought, every battle station, every capital ship from both civilizations. Concentrate fire on his command vessel. Even superior technology cannot withstand sustained bombardment from 1,000 capital ships. It would still cost us half our combined fleet," countered Admiral Stalgis, the Imperial Navy's chief tactical officer. "And if we fail, if the Titan survives our assault, we'd have no meaningful military capacity remaining. We'd be defenseless against both his retaliation and any other threats that emerge." "Then what do you propose?" Malgus snarled. "That we surrender. Accept his mercy and allow half the galaxy to die without resistance." "I propose we think strategically," Satele interjected, her voice cutting through the rising argument. "Thanos has given us his complete operational plan because he believes we cannot stop him. That confidence may be his weakness. Look here," she manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on technical specifications for the Decimator device. "This technology requires immense power generation. Notice the energy requirements. He needs to maintain stable connection to every inhabited system simultaneously. That means his flagship must remain stationary during activation. Which means he's vulnerable, Darth Marr finished, understanding crystallizing in his tone. For the duration of the culling process, he cannot maneuver, cannot engage in combat, cannot divide his attention between genocide and self-defense. Exactly, Satele confirmed. If we can force him to activate the Decimator prematurely, before his census is complete, we create a window. His data indicates optimal effectiveness requires 97.3% population accuracy. He's currently at 94.8% and climbing. But if we strike now, before he reaches that threshold, he must choose, delay and risk our military intervention, or proceed with suboptimal data and accept reduced effectiveness. Reduced effectiveness still means billions dead, Supreme Chancellor Suresh said quietly. Yes, Satele acknowledged, the word tasting like ash. But billions instead of trillions. A catastrophe instead of extinction. It is not victory. But it may be survival. The chamber fell silent as the assembled leaders contemplated the impossible calculus. How many deaths were acceptable to prevent even greater death? How much horror could they tolerate in service of minimizing total horror? Kira Carson, who had remained silent since returning from Korriban, spoke suddenly. There's something else. Something I felt when I was in his presence. All attention shifted to the young Jedi Knight, who seemed uncomfortable being the focus of so much high-level scrutiny. The Titan believes he's right. Completely. Absolutely. But there's something underneath that certainty. Something he's not acknowledging, maybe not even to himself. Explain, Darth Marr commanded. He's tired, Kira said softly. Bone-deep exhausted in a way that goes beyond physical fatigue. He's been doing this for millennia, making these decisions, bearing this burden, accepting condemnation from everyone he saves. And somewhere in his mind, buried under all that conviction, she struggled to articulate what her empathic senses had detected. He wants someone to stop him. Not because he doubts his methodology, but because he's tired of being the only one willing to make these choices. You're saying he wants to fail? Darth Vowron asked skeptically. No, Kira replied. I'm saying he wants to be proven wrong. He wants some civilization, somewhere, to find an alternative that actually works. To demonstrate that balance can be achieved without genocide. But every world he's encountered has followed the same pattern: resist, fail, collapse, or accept culling and thrive. He's never met a civilization that found a genuine third option. Satele felt something click in her mind. Then we give him one. We show him that this galaxy is different. That Republic and Empire, ancient enemies who have fought for generations, can unite against existential threat without either side dominating the other. That cooperation can achieve what neither side could accomplish alone. A demonstration of alternative methodology, Darth Marr said thoughtfully. Not through words, which he dismisses, but through action that contradicts his fundamental assumptions about civilizational behavior. It won't stop him, Master Cao warned. At best, it might make him pause. Reconsider. But his conviction is absolute. I felt it through the Force, or rather, I felt the absence where doubt should exist. Then we use that pause to strike, Malgus said, his strategic mind already calculating battle formations. Coordinate our assault for the moment his attention wavers. Commit everything. Accept the casualties. Destroy his capability to execute the culling even if we cannot destroy him personally. Admiral Kai activated a tactical display showing fleet positions across the galaxy. To concentrate sufficient force, we'd need to withdraw from 17 active combat zones. Leave borders exposed. Abandon defensive positions we've maintained for years. He looked between Republic and Imperial commanders. Both sides would be gambling everything on a single engagement. If we fail, there's no fallback position. If we fail, there's no galaxy worth defending, Admiral Stalgis countered. The Titan has made his timeline clear. We have 19 hours remaining. After that, he begins implementation whether we're prepared or not. So we choose, commit fully now, with imperfect coordination and desperate tactics, or wait and watch as our populations are culled while we maintained our precious defensive positions. Supreme Chancellor Suresh looked to the Sith delegation, her expression carrying decades of accumulated distrust. If we commit our fleets to this joint operation, how do we know the Empire won't use our vulnerability to seize territory? That you won't let us absorb the casualties while preserving your own forces for post-crisis conquest? You don't, Darth Marr said bluntly. Just as we cannot know the Republic won't betray us at some critical moment. This alliance is built on mutual desperation, not trust. But consider, if either side betrays the other and the Titan succeeds, we both lose half our populations. If we cooperate and fail, same outcome. The only scenario where either civilization survives intact is if we both commit completely and somehow succeed. He spread his armored hands. Pragmatism, Chancellor. Not friendship. Not trust. Just cold calculation that cooperation serves our mutual interests more effectively than treachery. The two leaders held each other's gaze across the holodeble, decades of war and enmity crystallized in that single moment. Finally, Suresh nodded. Pragmatism then. May the Force help us all. She turned to Admiral Kai. Begin fleet redeployment. Priority Alpha Protocol. Every capital ship, every battle group, converges on Korriban's system within 12 hours. Coordinate with Imperial forces. And Admiral, her voice hardened. If we survive this, and the Empire betrays us, I want immediate contingencies for response. But until then, they are our allies. Treat them accordingly. Similar orders were being issued on the Imperial side. Darth Marr coordinated with the Dark Council via secure hologram, his arguments cutting through objections with ruthless efficiency. Resources were mobilized. Fleets began their convergence. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, citizens looked up at unfamiliar ships appearing in their skies, former enemies now standing guard together against something worse. Beneath Carrick Station, in the secure intelligence vault, Satele worked with a team of Republic scientists and Imperial technicians, another unprecedented cooperation, minds that should have been developing weapons against each other now collaborating to understand alien technology. The data crystal from Thanos revealed much, but it also concealed critical details. The Decimator's exact location, its activation protocols, potential weaknesses in its energy distribution network, all carefully omitted from the otherwise complete documentation. He gave us enough to understand the threat, observed Dr. Eckerd Loken, an Imperial scientist with expertise in exotic technologies. But not enough to meaningfully counteract it. This is psychological warfare as much as technological demonstration. He wants us to know we're fighting a losing battle. Then we make him wrong, Satele replied, studying the energy signatures associated with the Decimator's activation sequence. Master Cow's reconnaissance data shows massive power fluctuations from the Titan's flagship whenever census operations intensify. If the Decimator is aboard that vessel, and it must be, given the energy requirements, then its signature should stand out. Should, Master Cow emphasized. But the entire ship radiates exotic energy patterns. Isolating one specific system is like trying to identify a single voice in a stadium full of screaming spectators. Kira Carson appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. Master Shan, you need to see this. We've been monitoring outer rim communications, looking for anomalies, and, she activated her datapad, projecting a star map. 3 systems just went silent. Simultaneous communications blackout. No distress signals. No warnings. Just, nothing. Satele felt cold dread settle in her chest. Thanos said he would begin in 19 hours. That was 45 minutes ago. Apparently he lied, Kira said grimly. Or he accelerated his timeline. Either way, he started. Alarms began wailing throughout Carrick Station. Within seconds, more reports flooded in, 6 systems dark now. Then 12. Then 27. The tactical display lit up like a plague map, red indicators spreading across the outer rim with terrifying speed. Satele ran for the command center, her companions following. She burst through the doors to find chaos, officers shouting updates, holographic displays showing fleet positions, and in the center of it all, Supreme Chancellor Suresh and Darth Marr standing side by side, watching their galaxy begin to die. Status report, Satele demanded. 41 systems have gone silent in the last 6 minutes, Admiral Kai reported, his voice hollow. We're dispatching scout ships but they're encountering something in those systems. Something that's, he paused, struggling to articulate what sensor data was showing. The populations are decreasing. Not through evacuation or migration. Just, decreasing. Lives vanishing from scanner readings as though they never existed. He's testing the Decimator, Darth Malgus realized, horror creeping into his electronically modulated voice. Using outer rim systems as trial runs before committing to full galactic implementation. How long until our fleets arrive at Korriban? Suresh asked. 9 hours at maximum speed, Admiral Stalgis replied. We can't push the hyperspace engines harder without risking catastrophic failures. 9 hours, Satele whispered. And Thanos tests his weapon on inhabited systems while we race to stop him. She looked at the spreading red indicators on the map, each one representing billions of lives, now reduced by half through technology that treated existence as a mathematical variable to be adjusted. Then we change tactics, Darth Marr said, his voice cutting through despair with cold determination. We cannot reach Korriban in time to prevent additional tests. But we can ensure that when we arrive, we hit him with everything. No half measures. No holding reserves for retreat. We commit absolutely, accept whatever casualties are necessary, and destroy that flagship even if it costs both our fleets. Agreed, Suresh said, though the words seemed to physically pain her. Admiral Kai, transmit new orders, all fleet elements advance at maximum possible speed. Ships that cannot maintain pace are to proceed independently and join the engagement as able. Priority target is the Titan's command vessel. Secondary targets are any vessels supporting Decimator operations. Everything else is irrelevant. Orders transmitted across encrypted channels. Across the galaxy, Republic and Imperial vessels received their commands and adjusted course. Crews that had spent careers fighting each other now prepared for joint operations against an enemy neither side fully understood. And on Korriban, Thanos watched his test results with satisfaction. The Decimator's performance exceeded projections. Outer rim systems have been culled with precision, exactly 50% population reduction, achieved instantaneously, executed with mathematical fairness that recognized no distinction between strong and weak, worthy and unworthy, innocent and guilty. Calibrations complete, his lieutenant reported. All systems optimal. Energy reserves at 98.4%. Census data at 96.1% accuracy and rising. Estimate full operational capability in 8.3 hours. Excellent, Thanos replied, watching sensor displays track the massing Republic and Imperial fleets. They're coming. United, desperate, convinced they can stop inevitability through courage and cooperation. He stood from his throne, walking to the chamber's viewport where Korriban's red wasteland stretched to the horizon. Let them come. Let them test their alliance against absolute certainty. And when they fail, when half their fleets dissolve into dust alongside their populations, they will understand what I have tried to teach them: balance is not cruel. Resistance is cruel. Accepting salvation is the only mercy that matters. Behind him, his armies prepared for war. A war they could not lose. A war that would end with half the galaxy saved whether they wanted salvation or not. And in the void between stars, Republic and Imperial warships raced toward Korriban, carrying the combined hope and desperation of two civilizations that had finally found common cause in the face of extinction. The Sith tomb that housed the ancient spirit of Darth Bane had stood undisturbed for millennia, a monument to the architect of the Rule of Two, buried deep beneath Korriban's Valley of the Dark Lords in chambers designed to test and torment any who dared approach. Now, those chambers served a different purpose. Thanos had chosen this location deliberately, drawn by sensor readings that indicated concentrated dark side energy radiating from the tomb's core. Energy he intended to harness. The locals worshipped death, Thanos observed to Ebony Maw, his most intellectually accomplished lieutenant. The slender alien stood beside him, studying holographic readings of the tomb's internal structure with academic fascination. They build monuments to fallen tyrants. They channel rage and hatred into a power source they call the Force. Primitive, but potentially useful. The energy readings are extraordinary, my lord, Ebony Maw replied, his voice carrying the melodious quality of someone who viewed mass murder as performance art. Not technological, but not purely biological either. Some hybrid phenomenon that responds to consciousness while existing independently of it. If we could understand the mechanism. We don't need to understand it, Thanos interrupted. We need only use it. The Decimator requires immense power to maintain simultaneous connection across galactic distances. These tombs radiate energy continuously, without fuel or maintenance. If we can tap that reservoir, we extend operational duration indefinitely. Balance becomes permanent, not temporary. They descended deeper into the tomb, passing through chambers decorated with murals depicting Sith atrocities, worlds burning, populations enslaved, power accumulated through violence and domination. Thanos paused before one particularly elaborate carving showing a Sith Lord holding thousands of souls in thrall, their essence flowing into him like tributaries feeding a river. They understood something your Jedi refused to acknowledge, Thanos said, tracing the carving with one massive finger. That power requires sacrifice. That dominance is the natural order. They simply lacked the discipline to apply that understanding systematically. They sought power for personal glory rather than universal salvation. Selfish children playing with forces beyond their comprehension. And yet they created this. Ebony Maw gestured to the dark side energy swirling visibly in the tomb's depths, crimson lightning that arced between ancient pillars, sustained by nothing but concentrated malevolence. Energy that persists across millennia, fed by nothing but the echo of one being's conviction. Imagine if such dedication were applied to your vision, Lord Thanos. Conviction so absolute it transcends mortality itself. Thanos said nothing, but something in Ebony Maw's words resonated. He had spent millennia pursuing balance, accepting that his work would end with his death, that future generations might abandon his methodology and return to the cycle of collapse. But if there were technology, or mysticism, the distinction hardly mattered, that could perpetuate his vision beyond his mortal span. Continue the analysis, Thanos commanded. If this dark side energy can be integrated with Decimator operations, I want protocols established before the fleets arrive. As you command, my lord. Though I must note, Ebony Maw hesitated, an unusual occurrence for someone usually drowning in verbose certainty. The Jedi spoke of balance. Of light and dark existing in harmony. What if tapping this concentrated darkness creates imbalance? What if your salvation becomes corrupted by the very energies you seek to harness? Thanos turned to face his lieutenant, and for a moment, something almost like doubt flickered in those implacable eyes. There is no corruption in certainty. No darkness in mathematics. The force these beings worship is simply another resource to be utilized in service of the greater good. Light, dark, these are meaningless distinctions. All that matters is the outcome. And the outcome, he looked back toward the tomb's heart, where Darth Bane's sarcophagus waited in perpetual shadow. Is inevitable. 8 hours later, the combined Republic Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Korriban system in the largest military formation either civilization had ever assembled. 743 capital ships, Republic Star destroyers and Imperial dreadnoughts standing side by side, their ancient enmity temporarily subsumed beneath survival instinct. Thousands of support vessels, fighter squadrons, troop transports, and supply ships filled the space between capital ships like schools of fish swarming around larger predators. On the bridge of the Republic flagship Indomitable, Admiral Kai stood shoulder to shoulder with Admiral Stalgus, both commanders studying tactical displays that showed Thanos' fleet in defensive formation around Korriban. The Titan's forces had grown, whether through additional arrivals or rapid construction, intelligence couldn't determine. What had been hundreds of ships was now over 1,000, their formations perfect, their weapons charged, their silence more threatening than any transmitted challenge. "They're not even hailing us," Admiral Stalgus observed. "No demands for surrender. No attempts at negotiation. Just waiting." "Because they're confident," Admiral Kai replied grimly. "They've seen our technical specifications from the data they captured during reconnaissance. They've calculated our offensive capabilities and found them insufficient." Satele Shan entered the bridge flanked by Darth Marr and Darth Malgus, an unprecedented sight that drew shocked glances from Republic officers who had spent careers learning to hate Sith on sight. But there was no time for historical animosity. Only the present crisis mattered. "Sensor analysis?" Satele asked, moving directly to the tactical station. "The flagship is there," Commander Dorn reported, highlighting the massive vessel at the formation's center. "Energy readings are off the scale. Whatever he's doing aboard that ship, it's consuming power at levels that should be impossible to generate or contain." "The Decimator," Darth Marr said with certainty. "He's preparing for full galactic implementation." "How long until activation?" "Unknown. But based on power curve progression, Dorn ran rapid calculations. No more than 2 hours. Possibly less." "Then we have no time for elaborate strategy," Malgus declared, his hands clenching into fists. "We punch through their defensive perimeter, concentrate all fire on the flagship, and keep firing until either it's destroyed or we are." "That's suicide," Admiral Kai protested. "Their defensive formations are designed to create overlapping fields of fire. We'd lose half our fleet before reaching engagement range with the flagship." "Then we lose half our fleet," Malgus shot back. "Better that than losing half our populations. Or would you prefer to preserve your precious ships while worlds die?" "Enough," Satele commanded, her voice cutting through rising tension. "We didn't unite our civilizations to repeat the same mistakes that brought us to this point. Admiral Kai is right, a direct assault costs too much. But Lord Malgus is also right, we cannot afford elaborate maneuvering." She studied the tactical display, her strategic instincts honed through decades of warfare analyzing angles and opportunities. "Here. The flagship's defensive formation creates a blind spot in this vector. It's heavily defended, but not impossible. If we commit a strike force, fast ships, experienced pilots, expendable from a strategic perspective, they could penetrate the perimeter while the main fleet engages frontally." "A feint," Admiral Stalgus said, understanding crystallizing. "We threaten their entire defensive line, force them to respond to multiple attack vectors. The strike force slips through during the chaos." "Exactly. And that strike force carries every anti-capital ship weapon we can load onto fast attack vessels. They don't need to destroy the flagship. They just need to damage the Decimator enough to disrupt its function." "Who commands this strike force?" Darth Marr asked. "It's a suicide mission. Whoever leads it won't return." "I will," Satele said simply. The bridge erupted in protests, Republic officers insisting their Grand Master was too valuable, Imperial commanders calculating the propaganda value of a Jedi Master's sacrifice. But Satele raised one hand, and the Force itself seemed to still the chaos. "I am the logical choice. I have the tactical experience, the Force sensitivity to navigate their defensive fire, and," she looked directly at Darth Marr. "I've stood in that being's presence. I understand how he thinks. If there's a way to exploit his certainty, his absolute conviction that he cannot fail, I'm most likely to find it." "Then you don't go alone," Darth Malgus said, stepping forward. Your strike force needs Sith. Jedi excel at defense, at preserving life. But for raw destructive power, his lightsaber ignited with a crimson snap hiss. You need those of us who have embraced destruction as philosophy. Satele met his gaze, seeing not an enemy but a warrior willing to die for his civilization's survival. She nodded. Assemble your volunteers. We launch in 30 minutes. As the bridge descended into coordinated chaos, officers coordinating attack vectors, pilots being briefed, weapons being loaded with desperate speed, Kira Carson approached Satele with barely concealed fear in her eyes. Master, you can't do this. If you die, who leads the Jedi? Who maintains the Alliance? The Jedi existed before me and will exist after, Satele replied gently. And this alliance, she gestured to Republic and Imperial personnel working side by side throughout the bridge, has momentum now. It will continue because both sides recognize necessity. My death would be tragic, but not catastrophic. The mission's failure, however, she didn't need to finish the thought. Then let me come with you, Kira pleaded. I can help. I can. You can survive, Satele said firmly. You can bear witness. If we fail, if Thanos succeeds, someone must remain who understands what happened here. Who can explain to future generations that we tried, that Republic and Empire stood together, that the galaxy was worth fighting for even when victory seemed impossible. She placed both hands on Kira's shoulders. That burden falls to you. It is heavier than martyrdom. But someone must carry it. Kira's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. Yes, Master. The strike force assembled in the Indomitable's main hangar, 47 ships ranging from Republic X-Wings to Imperial interceptors, each one crewed by volunteers who understood they were probably flying to their deaths. Satele's personal fighter had been modified with reinforced shields and experimental weapons salvaged from captured alien technology. It wouldn't be enough. But it was all they had. Darth Malgus approached her vessel, his own fighter, a black wedge bristling with weapons, parked alongside. Master Shan. A word before we die together. Satele descended from her cockpit's ladder. Lord Malgus. I have spent my life fighting Jedi, Malgus said, his respirator clicking steadily. Killing them. Proving Sith philosophy superior through victory after victory. And now I prepare to die beside one in defense of principles I have spent decades denouncing. He paused, and even through his mask, Satele sensed something like bitter amusement. The galaxy has a cruel sense of irony. Or perhaps the Force has been trying to teach us something we were too stubborn to learn, Satele replied. That light and dark are not enemies. That balance comes not from one side dominating the other, but from both existing in tension, different, opposed, but necessary. Perhaps, Malgus acknowledged. Though I suspect the Titan would find such philosophy absurd. To him, balance means elimination. Reduction. Mathematical certainty rather than mystical equilibrium. He looked toward Korriban, visible through the hangar's atmospheric shield, that red world where his journey with the Titan had begun, where it would likely end. If we fail today, Master Shan, if he achieves his genocide and our civilizations survive only as halved populations. Then we failed, Satele said. And future generations will learn from our failure. They will find ways to resist that we couldn't imagine. They will prove him wrong even if we cannot. Optimistic to the end, Malgus observed. Very Jedi of you. And your pessimism is very Sith, Satele countered. Perhaps that's why we need both. Someone to believe victory is possible, and someone to ensure we're prepared when it's not. Malgus extended one gauntlet hand. Satele stared at it for a moment, this gesture of respect from a being who had killed countless Jedi, who represented everything her order opposed. Then she grasped his hand firmly. For the galaxy, Satele said. For survival, Malgus replied. They separated to their respective fighters. Around them, Pilots completed final checks, whispered prayers to the Force or to Sith philosophies or simply to luck. Some were veterans of 100 battles. Others were barely past training. All understood the mathematics: 47 ships against 1,000, inferior technology against superior, desperation against certainty. They launched anyway. The main fleet engagement began precisely as planned, Republic and Imperial capital ships advancing in coordinated formation, their combined firepower saturating Thanos' defensive perimeter with enough ordnance to crack a moon. The Titan's forces responded with clinical efficiency, their weapons systems targeting with precision that suggested computer-assisted aiming or perfect coordination. Ships began dying on both sides, Republic destroyers burning from hull breaches, Imperial dreadnoughts venting atmosphere, alien vessels crumpling under concentrated fire. And in the chaos, Satele's strike force dove through the narrow gap in the defensive formation, 47 ships flying in perfect coordination through a gauntlet of death that claimed 12 of them in the first 30 seconds. "Stay tight," Satele commanded over the strike force channel, her hands dancing across her fighter's controls as she wove between energy blasts that could vaporize her vessel in an instant. "Trust your instincts. Trust the Force. And trust that every second we survive is another second the galaxy has hope." Darth Malgus's interceptor flew at her wing, his dark side presence a tangible weight in the Force even across the void of space. Together, Jedi and Sith, they led the survivors toward the flagship where Thanos prepared to unmake half the galaxy. And on that flagship, in chambers built upon Sith tombs, Thanos felt the approaching strike force through his sensor networks and smiled. "They're coming," he said to no one in particular. "The Jedi who sought to reason with me. The Sith who threatened me with Force powers. Both united in desperation, convinced their courage matters more than my certainty." He turned to Ebony Maw. "How long until Decimator activation?" 47 minutes, my lord." "More than enough time," Thanos replied. "Let them come. Let them witness what inevitability looks like when it refuses to be stopped by heroism or sacrifice or the power of friendship their stories celebrate. Let them die knowing they changed nothing." He returned to his throne, settling into it with the patience of someone who had waited millennia for this moment. Around him, the dark side energy he had tapped from Sith tombs swirled in crimson currents, feeding power to the Decimator, extending its reach, ensuring that when balance came, it would be absolute. Inevitable. Unstoppable. Final. Satele's fighters screamed through the defensive perimeter with shields at 15%, her astromech droid shrieking warnings about imminent structural failure. Behind her, the strike force had been reduced to 19 ships, the rest left as debris fields marking their desperate approach. But they were through. The flagship loomed before them, a massive obsidian construct that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it, its hull covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "All craft, target the central spire," Satele commanded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Concentrate fire on that structure. It's radiating the most power, likely the Decimator's primary housing." The surviving fighters formed attack formation, Republic and Imperial vessels flying in perfect coordination that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. They opened fire simultaneously, proton torpedoes and concussion missiles and experimental plasma charges all converging on the flagship's central tower. The weapons struck a barrier 20 meters from the hull, an energy shield that absorbed the ordnance and converted it into rippling light across an invisible surface. Not a single shot penetrated. "Shields are adapting to our weapon signatures," reported Captain Talos, a Republic pilot whose fighter had lost half its stabilizers but somehow still flew. "They're analyzing each impact and adjusting defensive harmonics in real time. Then we keep hitting them with different frequencies," Darth Malgus snarled over the channel. "Force them to adapt faster than their systems can compensate." His interceptor dove toward the flagship, weapons blazing with modified Imperial energy weapons that operated on principles stolen from dozens of conquered civilizations. The shield flickered. Adapted. Held. "Lord Malgus, this isn't working," Satele said, her tactical mind calculating vectors and probabilities. "We're buying time for the main fleet, but we can't breach these defenses with conventional weapons. Then we use unconventional methods, Malgus replied. Through the Force, Satele felt him gathering power, dark side energy pulled from rage and desperation and 3 decades of warfare culminating in this single moment. His interceptor accelerated directly toward the flagship, and Satele understood with horrible clarity what he intended. Lord Malgus, no. Someone must make the sacrifice, Malgus interrupted, his voice carrying an edge of something almost like peace. I have killed thousands. Conquered worlds. Proven Sith superiority through violence and domination. Let my death prove something else, that even the darkest among us can choose a meaningful end. His interceptor's engines redlined, pushing beyond safety parameters, converting his ship into a guided missile carrying enough explosive ordnance to crack a corvette's hull. The Force itself seemed to howl as Malgus channeled every ounce of his considerable power into a single focus strike, not physical force, but a concentrated lance of dark side energy designed to disrupt the flagship's defensive harmonics for just an instant. The shield flickered. Malgus's interceptor punched through. And Thanos' automated defenses, recognizing a threat that had actually breached primary containment, annihilated the small craft with focused fire that left nothing but expanding plasma where a Sith Lord had been. But the shield remained disrupted. A gap existed. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Now. Satele screamed. All remaining craft, full assault on the spire. Everything you have. 18 fighters dove through the gap, their weapons systems pushed to absolute maximum, firing with abandon born of desperation and the knowledge that Darth Malgus had just bought them with his life. The combined ordnance struck the tower directly, and for one glorious moment, Satele saw damage, actual structural compromise as armor plating buckled and internal systems sparked. Then the shield reasserted itself, and return fire from the flagship's point defense systems began systematically destroying her strike force. 1 ship. 2. 5. The count climbed with horrifying speed. Master Shan. Captain Talos called out as his fighter took a direct hit, spiraling out of control. Tell them static consumed the transmission. Break off, Satele ordered the remaining survivors. 7 ships now, their hulls scorched and shields failing. Retreat to the main fleet. We've done what we can. What we can wasn't enough, one pilot replied bitterly, but followed the order. Satele's fighter turned away from the flagship, but she extended her awareness through the Force one final time, reaching toward that void that wasn't void where Thanos' presence registered like a gravitational anomaly. And for just an instant, she felt it. Not doubt, not fear, but something almost like respect. The Titan had felt Malgus's sacrifice. Had understood its meaning. And remained utterly unmoved by its implications. Her astromech shrieked a new warning. 3 alien fighters had broken from the flagship's defensive pattern, pursuing her with single-minded focus. They were faster than her damaged vessel, better armed, and operating with coordination that suggested shared consciousness. Master Shan, you have pursuers, Darth Marr's voice crackled over long-range communications from the main fleet. We're sending support. No, Satele interrupted, banking hard to avoid incoming fire. The fleet needs every ship for the main engagement. I'll handle this. She dove toward Korriban's atmosphere, her fighter shaking as it hit upper atmospheric resistance at combat speeds. The pursuing craft followed without hesitation, their weapons firing continuously, forcing Satele to fly with every bit of skill she'd accumulated across 30 years of warfare. Behind her, one of the alien fighters clipped a piece of her fuselage, sending her craft into a spin she barely controlled. The Valley of the Dark Lords rose beneath her, that ancient burial ground now transformed into Thanos' staging area. She aimed for it deliberately, because if she was going to crash, she'd do it where she might still affect the outcome. Her fighter hit Korriban's surface at an angle that should have been fatal, plowing through red sand and ancient ruins, leaving a trench 200 meters long before finally slamming into the side of Darth Bane's tomb. The impact threw Satele against her restraints with bone-breaking force. Her astromech exploded. The canopy cracked. And everything went dark for a timeless moment. She woke to alarms shrieking, flames spreading through her cockpit, and the acrid smell of burning insulation. Her left arm was broken, she could feel it through the pain, and something wet ran down her face. Blood, probably. She triggered the emergency canopy release, and it shattered outward in a shower of transparisteel fragments. Satele pulled herself from the wreckage, falling 3 meters to Korriban's surface and landing hard enough to drive the breath from her lungs. Above, the alien fighters circled, their weapons tracking her but not firing. Why? If they'd wanted her dead, they could have finished her in the air. Because he wants to meet you again, came a familiar voice. Satele turned to find Ebony Maw standing at the tomb's entrance, his slender form silhouetted against interior lighting that pulsed with red energy. The Titan sensed your approach, Master Shan. He expressed curiosity about your persistence. Most beings who fail so completely accept defeat with grace. Yet you crashed your vessel deliberately, accepting near certain death, in hope of achieving something. What, exactly? Satele stood on shaking legs, drawing on the force to suppress pain and stabilize her injuries. To stop him. To save my galaxy. To prove that some choices are worth dying for. Admirable, Ebony Maw said, and impossibly, he sounded sincere. Futile, but admirable. The Decimator activates in 19 minutes. Your fleet is being systematically destroyed in orbit. Your strike force achieved nothing but martyrdom. And you, broken, bleeding, alone, stand before Thanos' stronghold as though you can somehow alter the inevitable through force of will. He gestured to the tomb entrance. Come. Let the Titan show you what inevitability looks like. Perhaps, in your final moments, you will understand that he offers mercy, not cruelty. Satele ignited her lightsaber, its blue blade casting shadows across ancient Sith iconography. I will never accept genocide as mercy. Then you will die ignorant, Ebony Maw replied with something almost like regret. But the Titan insists on giving you the opportunity to witness balance before the end. So come, Jedi. Walk willingly into history's judgment, or be carried. The choice is yours. Above Korriban, the battle raged. Republic and Imperial ships fought with desperate coordination against forces that seemed inexhaustible. For every alien vessel destroyed, 2 more appeared. For every successful breakthrough toward the flagship, the defensive perimeter adapted and sealed the gap. Casualties mounted on both sides, but the strategic calculus was clear, Thanos' fleet could sustain these losses indefinitely. The combined Republic-Imperial force could not. On the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Kai watched his tactical display with mounting horror. We're not winning. We're not even slowing them down. Then we die trying, Admiral Stalgus replied from his position at the Imperial Command Station. There is no retreat from this. Only victory or extinction. Perhaps there is another way, Darth Marr said, his modulated voice cutting through despair. Master Shan reached the surface. If she can access the Decimator directly, interfere with its activation from within. She's one person, Admiral Kai protested. Against whatever defenses the Titan has arrayed inside his stronghold. She is a Jedi Master who united our civilizations against impossible odds, Darth Marr countered. Who stood before the mad Titan and refused to accept his philosophy. Who has survived 3 decades of warfare against my empire and emerged stronger for it. If anyone in this galaxy can achieve the impossible, he looked toward Korriban, where sensors showed Satele's crashed fighter and the tomb complex surrounding it. It is her. Then we buy her time, Admiral Kai decided. All ships, press the attack. Target their command vessels, their support craft, anything that might divert their attention from the surface. Make them pay for every meter of space we contest. The fleet surged forward with renewed desperation, accepting catastrophic losses in exchange for marginal tactical gains. It was a strategy that couldn't be sustained, a last desperate gambit by commanders who had run out of options and time and hope. But it was something. And sometimes, in the darkest moments, something was better than nothing. Satele descended into Darth Bane's tomb, her lightsaber providing the only illumination beyond the pulsing red energy that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Ebony Maw led the way, his casual confidence suggesting he feared no ambush from a wounded Jedi. Perhaps he was right to be confident. Satele's left arm hung useless, her breathing came in pained gasps, and she felt the beginnings of shock setting in from injuries that required immediate medical attention she wouldn't receive. But she pressed forward anyway, because stopping meant accepting failure. The tomb opened into a vast chamber that made Satele's breath catch despite everything. The Decimator stood at the room's center, a structure that seemed too large for the space containing it, its geometry wrong in ways that hurt to perceive directly. Crystalline spires connected to a central core that pulsed with energy, and around it, swirling like planets orbiting a star, were streams of crimson lightning drawn from Sith tombs throughout the valley. Thanos stood before his creation, one massive hand resting on the Decimator's control interface, his expression serene. He turned as Satele entered, and for a moment, their eyes met across the chamber. "Master Shan," Thanos said. "You survived your crash. I am unsurprised. You are resourceful, determined, and absolutely convinced of your righteousness. All qualities I respect, even as I prepare to prove them insufficient." He gestured to the Decimator. "Beautiful, is it not? The culmination of millennia of research, powered by technologies from a dozen civilizations and augmented by the native energies of your dark practitioners. In 13 minutes, it activates. Half the galaxy achieves balance. And you," he smiled gently, "will witness the moment your philosophy dies." Satele raised her lightsaber despite the pain lancing through her injured arm. "I came here to stop you. If I die trying, so be it. But I will not stand idle while you commit atrocity." "Then do not stand idle," Thanos invited, spreading his arms. "Strike me down if you can. Demonstrate that your force, your training, your conviction can overcome inevitable mathematics. I welcome the attempt." Satele attacked. She drew on the force completely, channeling decades of training into a combat form that blended aggression with precision. Her lightsaber became a blur of blue light, striking from angles meant to exploit openings, testing defenses, seeking any weakness in Thanos' guard. He moved with impossible speed for something his size, catching her blade on his armored gauntlets, armor that somehow resisted lightsaber strikes that should have severed molecular bonds. His counterattacks were measured, controlled, designed not to kill but to demonstrate futility. One blow sent her sprawling. Another disarmed her briefly before she force-pulled her weapon back to hand. "You fight well," Thanos observed, not even breathing heavily. "But you fight as an individual. You have not yet learned what I discovered millennia ago, that individual excellence means nothing against systematic inevitability." Satele charged again, pouring everything into a desperate assault that combined force pushes with lightsaber strikes, attempting to overwhelm through sheer variety of attack. Thanos blocked, deflected, absorbed the onslaught without apparent effort. Then his fist caught her in the ribs, and Satele heard bones crack. She collapsed, her lightsaber extinguished, her vision swimming with pain and blood loss and the terrible understanding that Lord Malgus had been right. The Titan could not be stopped by courage alone. 11 minutes, Thanos said, standing over her broken form. "You have 11 minutes to witness balance. To understand that everything you fought for, everything you believed, was a beautiful lie told by those too weak to accept hard truths." He knelt beside her, his face surprisingly gentle. "I take no joy in this, Master Shan. But I take no regret either. Balance is necessary. And necessity transcends emotion." Above Korriban, the fleet battle reached critical mass. 30% of the combined Republican Imperial force had been destroyed. 50% had sustained major damage. The remainder fought on through pure stubbornness, accepting that they were dying to buy time they could no longer even quantify. And in the tomb, Satele Shan lay broken on ancient stone, watching the countdown to galactic genocide tick toward zero while the mad titan stood victorious over her fallen form. Satele's vision swam with darkness at the edges, pain and shock threatening to drag her into unconsciousness. Through blurred eyes, she watched Thanos return to the Decimator's control interface, his massive fingers moving across holographic displays with practiced efficiency. The device pulsed faster now, its energy signature building toward crescendo, the stolen dark side lightning from Sith tombs feeding into crystalline spires that hummed with barely contained power. 8 minutes remained. "You know what I find most tragic about your galaxy?" Thanos said without turning from his work. "Not your wars, though they are wasteful. Not your force philosophy, though it is naive. What truly saddens me is that you had the intelligence to understand what was coming. Your scientists projected resource depletion. Your historians documented civilization collapses following the same patterns I have witnessed across the universe. You knew unchecked growth leads to extinction. And yet you did nothing." "We did something," Satele gasped, forcing herself to her hands and knees despite ribs grinding against each other. "We chose freedom over your slavery. We chose hope over your mathematics. We chose to believe that life is worth living even with uncertainty, rather than accepting security through genocide." "Noble words," Thanos acknowledged. "History is full of noble words spoken by extinct civilizations. I prefer results to rhetoric." Satele's right hand closed around her lightsaber hilt, drawing it to her palm through the force. Standing was agony. Breathing was torture. But she stood anyway, because a Jedi served the Force until the very end, and the Force was screaming now, not in warning, but in desperate plea. The dark side energy feeding the Decimator was creating an imbalance, a wound in the Force itself that grew wider with each passing second. "You speak of balance," Satele said, igniting her blade with trembling hands. "But you understand nothing about true balance. Light and dark, life and death, creation and destruction, these exist in natural tension. Your Decimator doesn't create balance. It breaks it. I can feel it through the Force. You're using Sith energy to power your device, tapping into concentrated death and rage and hatred. That darkness, channeled through your technology, will corrupt whatever outcome you achieve." For the first time, Thanos hesitated. His hand paused over the control interface, and he turned to look at her with something approaching genuine curiosity. "Explain." "The dark side consumes," Satele continued, using words as weapons since her body had failed her. "It hungers. It twists noble intentions into atrocity. You believe you're saving civilizations, but you're feeding them into a machine powered by the accumulated malevolence of 10,000 Sith Lords. Whatever your Decimator does, whatever balance it creates, will be tainted by that source. Corrupted. Wrong. Superstition," Thanos dismissed, returning to his controls. "Energy is energy. The source is irrelevant. Only the application matters. Is that what you told yourself on Titan?" Satele pressed, dragging herself forward one painful step at a time. "When your homeworld rejected your proposal? Did you tell yourself their refusal was superstition, that your mathematics were infallible, that only you understood necessity? Another step. Or did some small part of you wonder if maybe, just maybe, they saw something you couldn't? Some alternative you were too certain to consider?" Thanos' hand stopped moving. For 3 heartbeats, the chamber fell silent except for the Decimator's hum. Then he spoke, and his voice carried weight that pressed against reality itself. "Titan died. Slowly. Horribly. My people descended into cannibalism before the end. Children killed parents for scraps of nutrition. The enlightened civilization that had produced art and science and philosophy for 10,000 years ended in screaming darkness beneath their moon's dying light." He looked at her directly, and Satele saw something terrible in those eyes, not madness, not evil, but absolute conviction born from absolute trauma. "I watched them die. All of them. Because they chose comfortable lies over hard truths. So no, Jedi. I do not wonder. I know. And I will never again allow certainty to be dismissed as extremism while civilizations march toward extinction. 6 minutes. Satele reached the Decimator, her lightsaber raised, every fiber of her being screaming that she needed to destroy this abomination before it activated. But Thanos moved between her and the device with speed that denied his size, his armored forearm catching her blade with a screech of metal that should not be able to resist plasma. You cannot stop this, Thanos said, not as threat but as statement of fact. Your weapon cannot penetrate the Decimator's shielding. Your force cannot disrupt its function. Your words, however eloquent, cannot unmake mathematical reality. Accept the inevitable, Master Shan. Spend your final minutes in peace rather than futile struggle. Futile struggle is all I have left, Satele replied, and attacked again. It was pathetic. She knew it even as she tried, broken ribs limiting her mobility, injured arm reducing her offensive options, blood loss sapping her strength. Thanos didn't even properly defend. He simply stood there, allowing her strikes to glance off his armor, waiting for exhaustion or injury to end her resistance naturally. Admirable determination, he observed as she stumbled, nearly falling. Wasted on an impossible task, but admirable nonetheless. Is this what your force teaches? To fight beyond hope, beyond reason, beyond even the body's capacity to continue? Yes, Satele gasped. Because sometimes fighting matters more than winning. Because witnessing injustice and doing nothing is worse than witnessing it and failing to stop it. Because, she collapsed to one knee, vision graying. Because the Force itself demands resistance to darkness, even when darkness seems inevitable. 4 minutes. Above Korriban, the fleet battle had devolved into desperate last stands. Admiral Kai's flagship was burning from bow to stern, life support failing, engines offline. Admiral Stalgus coordinated what remained of Imperial forces from a cruiser that had lost half its weapon systems. Darth Marr stood on a bridge littered with bodies, watching tactical displays show defeat's mathematical certainty. All ships, Kai transmitted on all frequencies, his voice steady despite the flames spreading behind him. It's been an honor serving with you. Republic, Imperial, it doesn't matter anymore. We stood together against extinction. Whatever comes next, static interrupted him. When his voice returned, it was fainter. Remember we tried. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Darth Marr replied, his modulated voice carrying across the channel. We proved that ancient enemies can unite against common threat. That courage exists beyond ideology. That sacrifice means something even in. Sensors registered a massive energy surge from the planet's surface. The Decimator was activating ahead of schedule. In the tomb, Satele felt it through the Force, reality itself beginning to tear, billions of connections between living beings and the cosmic energy field starting to fray. The Decimator had initiated its targeting sequence, and across the galaxy, populations were being catalogued, assessed, selected for preservation or erasure according to random algorithms that recognized no distinction between worthy and unworthy. No, Satele whispered, crawling toward the device despite Thanos making no move to stop her. No, no, no. Yes, Thanos corrected, his voice carrying terrible gentleness. Balance, Master Shan. Achieve not through your philosophy of harmony, not through political compromise, not through technological innovation. Achieve through the only method that has ever truly worked, systematic reduction of population to sustainable levels. Painful. Immediate. Permanent. Satele reached the Decimator's base, her hands touching crystalline structures that burned with stolen dark side energy. Through the Force, she could feel the device's function, not technology in any traditional sense, but a hybrid of science and something darker, something that used consciousness itself as medium for death. It didn't just kill. It erased, removing beings from existence so completely that only absence remained where they had been. And it was powered by hate. By rage. By the accumulated darkness of every Sith who had ever pursued power through domination, whose essence had been trapped in these tombs for millennia. Thanos believed he was using neutral energy, but he was wrong. The dark side was using him, twisting his mathematical salvation into something far worse than simple genocide. 2 minutes. Master Shan, Ebony Maw's voice intruded from across the chamber. You should know, the fleet battle has ended. Your combined forces are shattered. Survivors are retreating into hyperspace. No reinforcements are coming. No last-minute rescue will occur. You are alone, facing inevitability, with less than 2 minutes before the galaxy changes forever. Satele closed her eyes, reaching out through the Force one final time. She felt Kira aboard the Indomitable, screaming her name through their training bond. Felt Darth Marr standing vigil on his dying bridge, witnessing the end of his civilization with stoic acceptance. Felt billions across the galaxy going about their lives, unaware that half of them had less than 2 minutes to exist. And felt something else. Something she hadn't noticed before, buried beneath the dark side corruption and Thanos' overwhelming presence. The Force itself, responding. Not to her plea. Not to her desperation. But to the fundamental imbalance the Decimator represented. Light and dark existed in natural tension, but this device threatened to shatter that tension permanently. The Force, that cosmic energy field that bound all living things, was gathering itself, preparing to, what? She couldn't fully perceive it. But she felt potential building, power accumulating, destiny coalescing around this single moment. You feel it, Thanos said, watching her with those implacable eyes. Your Force, attempting to resist. Let me tell you what will happen, it will fail. I have factored Force interference into my calculations. The Decimator is shielded against energy manipulation, protected by principles that transcend your mysticism. Your cosmic consciousness cannot stop mathematics. 1 minute. Satele looked up at him, blood running down her face, body broken, hope exhausted. And smiled. You're right. The Force can't stop your device. Neither can I. Neither can anyone in this galaxy. She pulled herself upright using the Decimator as support, standing through sheer force of will. But you made one mistake. One critical miscalculation in all your careful planning. And what would that be? Thanos asked, genuinely curious. You assumed balance meant reduction, Satele said. That saving the galaxy required culling its population. But the Force teaches something different. That balance comes not from subtraction but from synthesis. Not from forcing harmony through violence, but from allowing natural tensions to resolve organically. She placed both hands on the Decimator, and this time, instead of trying to destroy it, she simply opened herself to the Force completely. So I'm not going to fight your device. I'm going to complete it. Explain, Thanos demanded, his first hint of concern entering his voice. Your Decimator was designed to kill half the galaxy, Satele said, her voice strengthening despite her injuries. But it's powered by the dark side, by concentrated hate, rage, and death. What happens if we feed light side energy into that mix? Not to fight it. Not to oppose it. But to create actual balance. Light and dark, life and death, preservation and destruction, operating simultaneously through the same mechanism. That would destabilize the device, Ebony Maw said sharply, his earlier calm vanishing. Lord Thanos, she's attempting to sabotage. No, Satele interrupted. I'm attempting to save everyone. Your device, your methodology, your mathematical perfection, all of it is based on destruction. But what if we could achieve your population reduction without death? What if the Force itself could redistribute life across the galaxy, moving populations to sustainable locations, creating new colonies on uninhabited worlds, solving your resource crisis without genocide? Impossible, Thanos declared. Relocation on that scale would require cosmic intervention, Satele finished. Which is exactly what the Force is. Not a tool. Not energy to be harnessed, but a living consciousness that binds all things together and responds to imbalance. Your Decimator created the greatest imbalance in galactic history. So I'm asking the Force to respond. To answer your mathematics with mystery. Your certainty with possibility. 30 seconds. Light side energy poured from Satele into the Decimator, mixing with the dark side lightning in patterns that had never existed before. The device began to pulse erratically, its carefully calibrated systems encountering input that contradicted every design parameter. Thanos lunged forward, attempting to shut down the activation sequence manually, but it was too late. The Decimator activated. And reality itself screamed. Across the galaxy, half the population felt a wrenching sensation, not death, but movement. Consciousness preserved while physical location shifted, bodies transported through impossible distances to worlds that could sustain them. Uninhabited planets suddenly found themselves hosting billions. Overcrowded core worlds discovered their populations reduced but not destroyed. Resources distributed. Space created. Balance achieved. Not through genocide. Through cosmic relocation on a scale that defied comprehension. On Coruscant, half the population vanished and reappeared on a dozen colony worlds in the Outer Rim, their new homes prepared by the Force itself from lifeless rock transformed into habitable environment. On Draman Kos, Imperial citizens found themselves scattered across empty systems, building new civilizations but still alive. The redistribution took 17 seconds. When it ended, the galaxy had changed profoundly, but not through death. Through transformation. In the tomb, Thanos stood frozen, staring at sensor readings that showed successful population reduction without the mortality figures his models had predicted. His Decimator had functioned. Balance had been achieved. But not his way. Not through culling, but through alternative methodology he had never considered possible. "What have you done?" he whispered. "Given you what you wanted," Satele replied, collapsing as the last of her strength fled. Balance. Sustainability. A galaxy where resources match population. But I did it your way and our way simultaneously. Force and technology. Death and life. Mathematics and mystery. She looked up at him through eyes that were already closing. You were right that the galaxy needed balance. You were wrong that balance required genocide. Sometimes, Thanos of Titan, the hardest math problems have elegant solutions. You just have to be willing to accept help finding them. Thanos stood in silence, his universe of certainties crumbling. His method had been proven unnecessary. His millennia of conviction revealed as one option among many. And worst of all, he couldn't even claim failure. His goal had been achieved, populations balanced, resources distributed, sustainability established. He simply hadn't been the one to save the galaxy. The Force had. Using his technology and her sacrifice and a synthesis he had been too certain to imagine. Lord Thanos, Ebony Maw ventured carefully. The fleet. What are your orders? Thanos looked at the Decimator, his perfect creation, now transformed into something hybrid and strange, still functioning but operating on principles that combined his mathematics with cosmic mysticism. He looked at Satele Shan, unconscious on the floor, her life fading but her mission accomplished. He looked at sensor readings showing a galaxy transformed not through his vision alone, but through compromise he had never considered possible. Withdraw, he said finally. Signal all vessels. We are leaving this galaxy. But my lord, we succeeded. Balance has been achieved. Surely we should. We should learn, Thanos interrupted, his voice carrying an emotion Ebony Maw had never heard from his master, uncertainty. This galaxy has taught me something I believed impossible, that my way is not the only way. That synthesis can achieve what domination cannot. I need time to process this. To understand what it means for my mission across the universe. He knelt beside Satele's unconscious form, studying her face with something approaching respect. You defeated me, Jedi. Not through superior force. Not through destroying my plans. But by completing them in a way I never imagined. That is a victory worth honoring. He stood, gesturing to Ebony Maw. Have her transported to a Republic medical facility. Ensure she survives. She has earned that much. He paused at the chamber entrance, looking back one final time. And transmit a message to both Republic and Empire leadership. The Titan withdraws. Your galaxy has proven itself worthy of survival. For now. Within hours, Thanos' fleet departed Korriban's orbit, ships vanishing through dimensional rifts back to whatever reality they had emerged from. The combined Republic Imperial forces, battered and confused, could only watch as their enemy simply left. Balance had been achieved. But not through conquest or surrender. Through something neither side had imagined possible. 3 months after the Titan's departure, Jedi Master Satele Shan stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Unity Station, a joint Republic-Imperial facility constructed in neutral space, its design incorporating both civilizations' architectural principles. Through the viewport, she watched construction vessels assembling the framework for what would become the first permanent diplomatic complex where Jedi and Sith could meet without weapons drawn. Her left arm had healed, though it still ached when storms approached. The ribs had mended. The scars remained, both physical and otherwise. But she was alive, which was more than she'd expected during those final moments in Darth Bane's tomb. Master Shan, Darth Marr's modulated voice came from behind her. The Joint Council is assembled. They await your testimony on the relocation crisis. Satele turned to face the Sith Lord who had become, impossibly, something approaching an ally. Crisis was the diplomatic term. Catastrophe might have been more accurate. Half the galaxy's population relocated overnight, families separated across star systems, governments fragmented, infrastructure abandoned, entire civilizations displaced to unfamiliar worlds. The Force had preserved life, but it hadn't solved the logistical nightmare of rebuilding societies torn apart by cosmic intervention. How many systems are still in chaos? She asked. 47, Marr replied. Down from 300 last month. Republic and Imperial relief efforts are coordinating effectively. Your Jedi healers working alongside Sith administrators, our military transports carrying your humanitarian supplies. It is unprecedented. It's necessary, Satele corrected. Thanos was right about one thing, unchecked growth leads to collapse. His solution was monstrous, but his diagnosis was accurate. This galaxy was consuming itself toward extinction. Now we have space. Resources. An opportunity to rebuild sustainably. If we don't resume killing each other first, Marr observed dryly. The ceasefire is holding, Satele said, though both of them knew how fragile that peace remained. Republic and Empire were exhausted, their fleets damaged, their populations displaced, their governments struggling to maintain authority across scattered territories. War wasn't impossible, just impractical for the foreseeable future. Which was something. They walked together to the council chamber, where representatives from both civilizations had gathered. Supreme Chancellor Suresh, her authority shakier since half her constituents now lived on different worlds. Members of the Dark Council, calculating how this new distribution of power affected Sith hierarchies. Jedi Masters and Sith Lords who had fought beside each other and couldn't quite return to pure enmity. The session lasted 4 hours, addressing everything from trade route re-establishment to citizenship questions for displaced populations to military deployment guidelines that prevented either side from exploiting the chaos. It was tedious, frustrating work, democracy and dictatorship attempting to find common ground, light and dark philosophies negotiating compromise rather than seeking dominance. But it was working. Slowly. Imperfectly. But working. Afterward, as the council dispersed, Kira Carson approached Satele with a datapad. Master, you should see this. It's from one of the relocated populations. The colony on Radavan Prime. Satele reviewed the report, survival statistics, resource assessments, societal adaptation metrics. The colony was thriving. Not immediately, not without struggle, but thriving. Populations forced to cooperate across old divisions, building new civilization from scratch, learning sustainability through necessity rather than philosophy. It's happening across the galaxy, Kira said quietly. People who would never have met, working together because they have no choice. Core worlders and outer rim settlers. Republic and Imperial citizens sharing the same new worlds. They're adapting. Creating something different. Balance, Satele murmured. Not through death. Through transformation. Through forcing us to abandon old patterns and embrace new possibilities. She looked at Kira with something approaching hope. Thanos wanted to save the galaxy through genocide. Instead, he catalyzed its salvation through relocation. The Force took his darkness and our light and created something neither of us could have achieved alone. Do you think he understood that? Kira asked. Before he left. Satele thought back to that final moment in the tomb, Thanos kneeling beside her unconscious form, his absolute certainty cracked by the realization that his way wasn't the only way. I think he started to. Whether that understanding changes him, whether it alters his mission across the universe, she shrugged. That's beyond our concern. We have a galaxy to rebuild. And for the first time in generations, we're rebuilding it together. As Satele departed Unity Station, returning to Coruscant where half-empty but somehow more peaceful streets awaited, she reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them here. An enemy from beyond the stars. A philosophy that threatened extinction. And a solution that had required both sides surrendering their certainties to embrace synthesis. The war between Republic and Empire wasn't over. Jedi and Sith philosophies remained fundamentally opposed. But they had proven something crucial, that ancient enemies could unite against common threat. That balance came not from one side dominating, but from both existing in tension. That the galaxy was stronger for its diversity than it would be under any single vision of order. Thanos had sought to save the galaxy by having it. Instead, he had saved it by forcing it to double its possibilities, to imagine futures beyond endless war, to build societies that incorporated rather than eliminated difference, to achieve through compromise what neither side could accomplish through domination. In the end, balance had been achieved. Not through mathematics or mysticism alone, but through both. Not through the Titan's certainty or the Jedi's hope, but through synthesis of impossible opposites. The galaxy far, far away would never be the same. But perhaps, just perhaps, it might be better. May the Force be with you. More stories await.